Chapter 1, Trapped in a Loop. This was the 9th time Hope had been trapped in the loop, and it was also the last. If Ethan Westwood couldn't recognize her this time, she would vanish from this world for good. 3 years ago, Hope Donovan died. She died in a horrific car crash. She had floated in the air, watching helplessly as her own body was dragged away, watching sorrow crawl over Ethan's handsome face, his pain so profound it was as if he had lost half his own life. It was only then that she understood that the dead could still feel heartache. She clutched her chest, the pain so sharp it felt like she was reliving the crash all over again. Hope thought she would simply disappear from the world, but she never expected to suddenly possess a brand new face. The moment she, wearing this unfamiliar face, told Ethan that she was Hope Donovan, she lost consciousness before he could even react. When she woke up again, she had yet another face she had never seen before. After a few repeated attempts, she finally understood. She couldn't tell anyone her true identity. The moment she did, she would be thrown back into the loop. Only when Ethan truly recognized her could she break free. And this loop wasn't endless. She only had 9 chances. Once those 9 chances were used up, she would disappear from the world forever. In the second loop, seeing Ethan in the depths of despair over her death, she couldn't stop herself from comforting him as Hope. The third loop found Ethan at his lowest. He locked himself in his room all day, refusing to see anyone. Hope watched as his sharp features grew haggard and he became thinner by the day. Still, she couldn't bear to tell him she was Hope. In the fourth loop, he finally began to emerge from the darkness and met a girl who looked remarkably like her. She was jealous. The fifth loop. Hope watched him waste away, suffer, and finally find a semblance of peace. If the person you love most returned to your side with a stranger's face, would you be able to recognize them? Years ago, Hope had confidently thought that Ethan definitely could. They had grown up together, been in love for 10 years. The person who knew her best in this world was Ethan Westwood. He was familiar with the tone of her voice, the scent she wore, and knew everything she loved and hated. He once told her that even if there were 10,000 women in the world who looked exactly like her, he could pick her out from a crowd in a single glance. But the man who had made that vow, who had said she was unique among millions, was the reason she was now trapped in her 9th loop. So many chances, all wasted. Now, only this last one remained. This time, she couldn't afford to be reckless. She had to approach him slowly, make him believe, little by little, that she was the Hope he loved so deeply. The first step of her plan was to create an opportunity for them to meet. Hope knew that Ethan drove himself down East Garden Avenue every day at 5 in the afternoon. She prepared early, and as soon as she saw his black Maybach appear, she didn't hesitate to drive her car straight into his rear bumper. Having just survived a major car accident, Hope still felt a lingering fear of driving. It took her a long moment after the cars stopped to come back to her senses. She composed herself, opened her door, and walked to Ethan's car, bending down to look into the driver's side window. "I'm so sorry, that was my fault. Are you hurt?" The driver's window was only half rolled down, revealing Ethan's cool, handsome profile. He didn't even glance at Hope. Instead, he stretched out an arm in front of the passenger seat, shielding the face of the woman beside him. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Only after getting a negative answer from the passenger did he finally lift his gaze to Hope. His eyes were cold, and the words that came from his thin lips were icy and ruthless. "You should be thankful her face wasn't injured. Otherwise, I guarantee you'll never get behind the wheel of a car again." Chapter 2. Reunion. Hope froze for a moment. Ethan had always been gentle and kind to her. He had never been this cold and aggressive. But how could she forget? She now wore a face that looked nothing like Hope Donovan. In his eyes, she was just a stranger. As Hope stood frozen there, the person in the passenger seat suddenly leaned forward and smiled at her. "I'm sorry, my boyfriend thought I was hurt, so his tone was a little harsh. Are you okay?" It was an exquisitely beautiful face. Her flawless skin was fair and rosy, and her vibrant eyes shone like the brightest stars in the sky, brilliant and dazzling. It was Chloe Carter, a woman who bore a striking resemblance to the old Hope. Seeing that face, Hope was instantly stunned, unsure whether she should feel pain or relief. She stared, lost in thought, until Chloe had waved a hand in front of her face several times. "Miss, are you all right?" Hope awkwardly pulled her gaze back and forced a smile at Ethan. "I'm truly sorry. I'll cover all the repair costs for your car. Would it be convenient to get your contact information? Ethan's expression remained cold. That won't be necessary. He was always aloof and proud. He wouldn't casually give his number to a stranger. In the end, seeing her profound embarrassment, it was Chloe who reluctantly gave her a number for a messaging app. Since no one was injured and Ethan had no interest in compensation, he drove away from the scene without another word. Back in her car, Hope added the number Chloe had given her. The request was accepted almost immediately. Chloe's profile picture was a photo of her and Ethan from behind, taken at Lake Como, a place Hope had always dreamed of visiting. She remembered making detailed travel plans, but Ethan was always busy with the company, promising he would go with her next month. The trip to Lake Como was postponed again and again. Until the day she died in the car crash, she never got to walk hand in hand with Ethan along the shores of Lake Como, watching the seagulls. Hope didn't know what to feel. She numbly scrolled through Chloe's social media feed, looking at post after post documenting their romance. He had given her a one-of-a-kind diamond necklace, even having her name engraved on it. He had taken her to the highest rooftop in the city to watch the most romantic fireworks. He, a man who'd never lifted a finger in the kitchen, had personally cooked for her, just to make a bowl of noodles. Hope looked at these photos again and again, feeling as if a bucket of ice water had been thrown in her face. A tsunami of grief washed over her, and her heart ached so intensely it felt like it would split open. These were all things she had once wanted Ethan to do for her, things he never got the chance to do. If only she hadn't been in that car crash. If only she were still the real Hope Donovan. Now, she wasn't even sure if she should continue trying to get close to Ethan. What if he wasn't just using Chloe as her substitute? What if he had genuinely fallen in love with her? But there were no what-ifs in this world. She didn't dare to think about it any further. The most important thing right now was to get close to Ethan. No matter what he was thinking, she had to hear it with her own ears and see it with her own eyes to believe it. Hope knew he was recently hiring an assistant, so she immediately polished her resume and hit send. The next day, just as she expected, she received a reply from Westwood Group's HR department. Chapter 3. Getting closer when she submitted her resume, Hope knew she would be selected. Because no one in the world knew Ethan Westwood better than she did. After 3 rounds of interviews, she finally landed the job at Westwood Group, taking her seat at the assistant's desk just outside the CEO's office. She used to visit Westwood Group often, and she had met most of the employees. As she walked in, she forgot for a moment that she was no longer Hope Donovan and greeted the receptionist instinctively. "Lucy, you look beautiful today." Lucy looked at the unfamiliar face, thinking her tone was remarkably similar to the CEO's late fiancé. The former Miss Donovan used to smile and say the exact same thing whenever she visited. Realizing her slip-up, Hope smiled sheepishly. "Assistant Shaw gave me a file on all the company staff, so I memorized it beforehand. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm the new assistant, Rhea Lane." From now on, she was no longer Hope Donovan. She was Rhea Lane. Pushing open the door to the CEO's office, Rhea looked at everything associated with Ethan, her eyes turning red. The familiar sofa, the familiar decorative painting. But things were different now. She was no longer the Hope who could act without a care in the world. Rhea reined in her thoughts, straightened the painting, and rearranged the items on Ethan's desk. He was left-handed, so the pens had to be placed where he could easily reach them. He didn't like sugar in his coffee, and it had to be at a drinkable temperature. He disliked the smell of perfume, so all the scented diffusers and fragrant plants had to be removed. With every task she did for Ethan, Rhea's spirits lifted a little. Even if he couldn't recognize her now, she was content just to be by his side like this. When Ethan arrived, Rhea was standing by the door, but he walked straight past her without a single glance. A moment later, he strode back out, a flicker of tension in his eyes. "Who's been in my office?" Mark Shaw, his executive assistant, immediately stepped forward to explain. It was the new assistant. Her name is Rhea Lane. Only then did Ethan's gaze fall upon Rhea. But after seeing her face clearly, the nascent hope in his eyes vanished instantly. He frowned, a chill growing in his deep eyes. "From now on, do not enter my office without my permission." So, not only had he not recognized her as Hope, he had even forgotten she was the one who had rear-ended him. She couldn't blame Ethan. Her current face bore no resemblance to Hope's. Even if she knew all his preferences, he wouldn't immediately connect her to Hope. She nodded and accepted the blame, which seemed to quell Ethan's anger. At noon, Rhea ordered lunch according to his preferences. Before she could even knock on his door, she saw Chloe approaching from a distance, carrying a lunch box. Just as it had been when she used to visit Westwood Group, the employees greeted Chloe with smiles. "Miss Carter, you're here." Seeing Chloe at this moment was not what Rhea had hoped for. After all, they had just had a fender bender, and now she was Ethan's assistant. It would be hard for anyone not to think she had ulterior motives and had approached him on purpose. Chloe walked straight up to Rhea, looking her up and down before recognition dawned. "It's you." Rhea forced a smile and greeted her. Before they could say much more, Ethan opened his office door and pulled Chloe inside. He took the lunch box from her, his eyes filled with adoration. "Didn't I tell you not to go out of your way to bring me lunch?" Chloe smiled and leaned against his shoulder, speaking playfully. "But I missed you. I just knew you wouldn't eat properly at noon. What if you upset your stomach?" As the door closed, Chloe glanced back at Rhea with a meaningful look. Chapter 4. Throw it away. Rhea just stared blankly at their retreating backs, unable to snap out of it for a long time. Seeing her dazed expression, a more talkative employee sidled up to Rhea to gossip. "You're new, so you don't know. This Miss Carter looks exactly like the CEO's fiancé who passed away in an accident. Anyone can see the CEO is just using her as a substitute. But she doesn't seem to mind being a replacement, fawning over him every day and acting like the boss's wife, ordering us around. I don't think being a substitute is so bad. The CEO spoils her rotten. He'd give her anything she wants. If she asked for the stars, he'd probably pluck them from the sky for her. Exactly, maybe the CEO has actually developed real feelings for Miss Carter. I think he treats her even better than he treated Miss Donovan. Remember that time, Miss Carter's forehead was grazed by a falling painting. The CEO was furious. After that, no more paintings were allowed to be hung in the entire building. And that necklace he gave her, it cost a full $50 million, and that's not even the most important part. The people who wanted that necklace are all rich and powerful. They don't care about money. The CEO had to pull a lot of strings to get it. I heard Miss Donovan had her eye on that necklace back then, but the CEO never bought it for her. The chatter continued, but Rhea couldn't hear a word of it. Her mind was in turmoil, thrown into chaos by the phrase "developed real feelings." She stood there numbly, feeling as if a knife had been brutally stabbed into her heart. It had been 3 years. 3 years since Hope Donovan died. 3 years was long enough to forget someone, and long enough to fall in love with someone new. Rhea let out a barely audible sigh and forced back the mist welling in her eyes. Half an hour later, a message came from the CEO's office, asking Rhea to go in and clean up. When she knocked and entered, Chloe was lounging on a beanbag chair by the floor-to-ceiling window, reading a magazine. Seeing Rhea, she didn't get up, merely lifting her eyes to glance at her coolly. "You were the one who rear-ended us." Rhea smiled sheepishly. "Yes, I was in a rush that day. I'm truly sorry." Ethan, sitting to the side, was looking down, seemingly paying no attention to them. Chloe's lips curved into a smirk. "You'd better be more careful next time. Anyone who didn't know better might think you did it on purpose, that you have ulterior motives." How humiliating. Her intentions had been seen right through. Rhea's face burned, and any explanation she could offer felt weak and pathetic. "It was truly an accident that day, Miss Carter. I apologize." Chloe laughed. "I was just saying, don't be so nervous. Just clean up and get out. Oh, and take that cartoon painting on the wall and throw it away. It's hideous." On the wall behind the desk hung a cartoon painting of a cute, futuristic cat, its whimsical style clashing with the office's modern, serious decor. She had painted that picture herself and hung it up with her own hands. Back then, Ethan had smiled indulgently and said that if any clients saw it, they would surely make fun of him. She had insisted, saying she wanted everyone to know that Ethan Westwood, the CEO of Westwood Group, belonged to her, Hope Donovan. Rhea clenched her fists tightly. "I think this painting is quite creative. It keeps the room from feeling too somber. Miss Carter, perhaps you should let it stay." Chloe looked up, annoyed. "Miss Lane, don't forget your position. Do I need your permission to throw something away?" She knew that after the car incident, Chloe was biased against her. As a last resort, she looked to Ethan. "Mr. Westwood, what do you think?" At this, Ethan finally looked up. He frowned slightly, his cold gaze fixed on the cartoon cat painting on the wall. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Throw it away." Chapter 5. A familiar stranger, those three simple words felt like a boulder crushing Ria's heart. An image of herself painting flashed through her mind. She had loved drawing ever since she was a child. When no one else believed in her, it was Ethan who had picked up her drawings one by one, saving them carefully, telling her that with her talent, she would become a great artist one day. He had said he would collect all her current works, and when she became famous, he would be her very first fan. But now, he was telling her to personally throw away the painting she had cherished most in her life. "What are you standing there for?" Chloe's somewhat triumphant voice sounded in her ear. Ria snapped back to reality, walked step by step to the wall, and reached up to take down the frame. As she threw the frame into the trash can, she felt as if her heart had been thrown in along with it. She looked at the discarded painting and felt that what Ethan wanted to throw away was perhaps not just a painting, but all his memories of Hope Donovan. This love had become a burden to him. Only by discarding everything related to her could he find his own salvation. Ria's eyes were wet. In the end, she couldn't stop herself from retrieving the painting, wiping it clean, and stowing it away in a drawer in her own office. For the next few days, Chloe didn't come back. One day, as Ethan was passing by her desk, Ria happened to open the drawer. Ethan's eyes landed squarely on the painting inside. He stopped in his tracks, his gaze fixed on the painting, his brows unconsciously knitting together. Ria's heart pounded. She spoke tentatively. "I really like this cartoon, and I thought the painting was interesting, so I kept it. If you don't approve, I can get rid of it right now." Hearing this, Ethan's expression darkened, countless emotions flickering in his eyes before he quickly regained his composure. "No need. If you like it, you can keep it." She let out a breath of relief, then heard Ethan speak again. "You like this painting?" Ria nodded. "Looking at it just makes me happy." Ethan was taken aback. For the first time, he lifted his head and looked at her seriously. Hope had said those exact words, but the woman in front of him bore no resemblance to Hope at all. He didn't know why someone who looked so completely different could give him such a strong, familiar feeling. In the days that followed, Ria stayed late with Ethan every day as he worked overtime. Ethan saw this but didn't say anything. He felt both a strangeness and a familiarity with Ria. But now he had Chloe by his side, Chloe, who looked almost identical to Hope. He didn't need another substitute. As midnight approached, Ethan was still in his office. Ria looked at the gradually emptying workspace, walked to his door, and knocked softly. She knew that once Ethan got caught up in his work, he lost all track of time. In the past, she would have to call him several times to urge him to come home. When there was no response, she quietly pushed the door open. Inside, Ethan was leaning back in his chair, his eyes closed, seemingly in a deep sleep. Ria looked at the handsome, sleeping face of the man right in front of her, feeling a sense of powerlessness against fate. The person she loved most was right there, but they couldn't recognize each other. She tiptoed forward and gently draped a blanket from the sofa over him. Just as she was about to turn and leave, the man behind her suddenly grabbed her hand tightly. "Don't go," Ria's heart skipped a beat. She turned in shock, only to see that his eyes were still closed, his brow furrowed as if he were having a nightmare. He had always been a light sleeper, easily woken by the smallest sound. Only when she was by his side could he sleep peacefully. Seeing this, Ria couldn't bring herself to take another step away. Once you start to hope, you are no longer easily satisfied. At first, she thought it was enough just to be near him. But now, she yearned more and more for Ethan to recognize her. These days by his side had made her realize just how inseparable her love for him was. Chapter 6. Who Are You? The next morning, when Ethan woke up, he realized he had slept the entire night in his office. He hadn't slept so soundly through the night since Hope had left him. Last night, he had dreamed of Hope, and suddenly the air around him was filled with her scent. When he woke up, however, all that was left was his new assistant, Ria Lane. It was strange. Ria bore no physical resemblance to Hope, yet she inexplicably made him feel a sense of closeness, even more so than Chloe. After that night, Ria could feel that Ethan was no longer so guarded around her. He would have her arrange his 3 meals a day. He would finish the afternoon tea she prepared every time. He even started taking her with him to some business functions. Rhea felt the distance between them shrinking. Sooner or later, he would realize that she was the hope he had once loved so deeply. That evening, Ethan was scheduled to attend a city-wide charity gala, and she was to accompany him as his plus one. She never thought she would have the chance to attend a gala with Ethan again, especially not now, when he had Chloe. In the car on the way to the event, Rhea looked at Ethan, who was resting with his eyes closed beside her. She wished time could freeze in this moment so she could look at his face forever. Before long, the car pulled up to the hotel entrance. Rhea opened the door and stepped out, only to see Chloe already waiting by the door, dressed in an evening gown far more exquisite than her own. Upon seeing Ethan, she immediately rushed over and threw herself into his arms. "Ethan, what took you so long? I've been waiting for ages." Ethan gently stroked the back of her head, the affection in his eyes almost overflowing. "Let's go inside." Standing off to the side, Rhea watched the scene unfold, her legs feeling as if they had turned to stone, unable to move a single step. So, she wasn't his date for the event at all. He had brought her along merely to look after Chloe and to handle the tiresome business interactions for him. The lights were dazzling. Amid a frenzy of flashing cameras, he made a grand entrance with Chloe on his arm. Everything that had once belonged to Hope, he now lavished upon Chloe without a second thought. He introduced her to all his friends and business partners. He danced the opening dance with her. He made her the object of every woman's envy. And Rhea could only stand in an inconspicuous corner, a mere guest. She was angry, both as Hope and as Rhea. So when Chloe started ordering her around later, her personal feelings bled through. "Assistant Lane, go get me a glass of wine." "I don't drink red wine. I want champagne. This dessert is so sweet. Are you trying to kill me with sugar?" Rhea frowned and placed the dessert in her hand down on the table with a thud. "Miss Carter, I am Mr. Westwood's assistant, not your personal maid," Chloe sneered. "So you do know your place. Rhea, I'm warning you, whatever schemes you're hiding, you'd better put them away. Otherwise, I have plenty of ways to deal with you." She looked at Chloe. "And what about you? What schemes are you hiding? You know perfectly well that you only have Ethan's favor because you look like Hope. Aren't you perfectly willing to be her substitute?" Chloe's face turned ugly, but then she curved her lips into a cold smile. "So what? Whoever wins Ethan's love is the winner. Besides, what makes you so sure Ethan won't fall in love with me?" After coming out of the restroom, Chloe's words still echoed in Rhea's ears. That's right. Had she been too confident? What made her think Ethan couldn't fall in love with someone else? She looked up at the crowd in the distance. Many people were gathered around Ethan. As the most outstanding young entrepreneur, Ethan Westwood's reputation was immense, and there was no shortage of people trying to flatter him. But if he kept drinking, he would get drunk. Ethan's stomach had always been weak. In the past, whenever they attended banquets, she would be by his side, skillfully deflecting one toast after another. She picked up a glass of wine and, just as she always had, pushed her way through the crowd. "Mr. Adler, I've heard so much about you. A toast to you. Mr. Grant will be counting on your cooperation for the project." Nearby, Ethan held his wine glass, watching her silently, an inscrutable glint in his deep eyes. She drank a lot of wine before finally getting rid of them all. Ethan didn't say a word, just watched her quietly. When the crowd dispersed, Rhea handed him a glass of juice. "Does your stomach hurt after all that wine? Drink some juice to settle it." But Ethan didn't reach for it. Instead, his gaze turned cold and heavy as he looked at her. "Who are you, really?" Chapter 7. The engagement, the lighting in the venue was dim, and Rhea's face was hidden in the shadows. She didn't dare to look directly at Ethan's silhouette. How she wished she could answer that she was Hope, the Hope who had died in a car crash 3 years ago, the Hope he was on the verge of forgetting. But she couldn't. She could only smile bitterly and explain, "Mr. Westwood, you've had too much to drink. I'm Rhea Lane, your assistant." Ethan's brow furrowed tightly. He suddenly reached out and seized her by the neck, his eyes sharp and cold. "You're deliberately imitating Hope. What's your goal? Speak." So he could sense the small details about her that were similar to Hope, yet he couldn't sense that she was Hope. Could it be that in his heart, Hope's appearance was far more important than her soul? Rhea struggled to breathe, her hands clawing at Ethan's arm as she gasped for words. "I did know Hope she was my senior in college, but I truly have no other motive. I used to admire your relationship, That's why I wanted to get closer to you." She struggled for a long time until a hot tear slid from the corner of her eye and landed on the back of Ethan's hand. He flinched as if burned and abruptly released her. The light in Ethan's eyes dimmed. Rhea couldn't decipher the meaning in his gaze. There was anger, disappointment. Rhea stumbled back a few steps, coughing violently. It took a long time for her to catch her breath. She looked up at Ethan, finally unable to hold back her question. "Do you still remember Hope? It seems to me your heart has long been captured by Chloe. Otherwise, how could you let her erase every trace of Hope's existence?" Perhaps her words were too sharp, or perhaps her current identity gave her no right to ask such a question. Ethan's expression changed instantly, the fury in his eyes suppressed and violent. "That has nothing to do with you. You have no right to question my private life." Rhea had rarely seen him so out of control. He was always so calm and composed. She remembered years ago when Westwood Group faced a financial crisis. She had been so worried she couldn't sleep for nights, her lips breaking out in sores from the stress. Yet he, the man who held the company's fate in his hands, remained as serene as ever, as if he didn't care about its survival at all. His deepest sensitivities were not to be touched. She just didn't know if his sore spot now was Hope or Chloe. If he had already fallen in love with Chloe, what was the point of making him recognize her? When the banquet ended, Rhea didn't take Ethan's car back. He had to escort Chloe, and being caught in the middle would only bring her more misery. The late autumn night was bone-chillingly cold. Wearing only a thin formal dress, she walked step by step toward home. With each step, her body seemed to grow lighter. A sense of panic began to creep into Rhea's heart. Was her time running out? Perhaps her very existence was tied to Ethan. That might be why she could only continue to live if he recognized her. Now that she felt herself fading, did it mean she was also fading from Ethan's heart? Rhea didn't know, and she didn't dare to think about it. After returning home, Rhea fell gravely ill, running a high fever for several days. She had to take a week of sick leave. When she finally recovered and returned to work, Lucy was the first to rush to her desk, mysteriously handing her a box of candies. "Rhea, have some candy, it'll chase the sickness away." She took the box. It was from a high-end international brand, not only expensive, but with every detail intricate and exquisite. It was clear the giver had put a lot of thought into it. Rhea smiled and thanked her. "Congratulations getting married so soon. I haven't even prepared a gift for you." Lucy pouted. "It's not me. How could I afford such expensive candy?" "It's the CEO. He's getting engaged to Miss Carter." Chapter 8. The language of sunflowers. Rhea couldn't describe the feeling that washed over her when she heard Ethan was getting engaged to Chloe. It was like a violent tsunami had crashed in, sweeping away all her thoughts. Her heart was empty, her mind was blank. She had completely lost the ability to think. Lucy called her name several times from behind before she finally snapped out of it. "Rhea, Assistant Shaw needs you to contact a florist to prepare for tonight's engagement ceremony. Oh, and he also said to order roses, Miss Carter's favorite." Rhea numbly agreed, but she stood rooted to the spot, feeling as if she had been hollowed out. She had thought she had more time, but now it seemed her departure was imminent. Reality had already told her she was destined to lose this gamble, yet a lingering shred of hope in her heart continued to scream and entice her. One more try, just one last try. She took a taxi to the florist. Instead of roses, she ordered 10,000 sunflowers. They were her favorite flower when she was alive. She loved the meaning behind them, loyal love. She had told Ethan that if he wanted to marry her, he had to prepare 10,000 sunflowers. If Ethan still couldn't recognize her, she would willingly withdraw from this game and disappear from his life for good. Ethan had arranged for the engagement ceremony to be held on a yacht. She heard that he had hired the most renowned designer in the country to plan the event. Even the fireworks for the ceremony cost millions. When Rhea arrived at the yacht with the flowers, she happened to run into Ethan giving Chloe a tour. Seeing the flowers behind her, Chloe's smile instantly froze on her face. She let go of Ethan's hand, her body trembling, the picture of utter disappointment. "Ethan, after all this time, you still can't forget her. You're still using me as her substitute." With that, she ran off in tears. Rhea stood in place, watching as Ethan walked toward her, step by step, the chill in his eyes deepening with each one. Then, his cold, slender fingers shot out and gripped her chin tightly. 10,000 sunflowers were a secret between Hope and me that no one else knew. How did you find out? Ria's heart began to race. She felt the answer was on the tip of Ethan's tongue, ready to burst forth. Is that so? I thought you had forgot. He stood over her, his eyes glinting with a cold light, his sharp gaze like a dagger. Who are you? What is your purpose in imitating Hope and getting close to me? Ria opened her mouth, but she couldn't answer the question. Who I am doesn't matter. Can you not marry Chloe? Ethan's brow furrowed into a deep line as he stared coldly into her eyes. On what grounds do you make such a request? That's right. In her current identity, she was just Ethan's assistant. What right did she have to interfere in his love life? In the end, she could only look at him in despair, letting tears fall silently down her cheeks. What if it were Hope? What if Hope asked you not to marry her? At her words, Ethan's body trembled slightly. After a long silence, he finally released her, his face returning to its usual calm. She's not coming back. Chapter 9, Big Dummy, the Ninth Loop. Once again, Ria didn't get the answer she was hoping for. She watched as Ethan coldly ordered the workers behind him to throw the 10,000 sunflowers onto the shore and replace them with brighter, more beautiful roses. The feeling was just like that year after her car crash, when she could only watch helplessly as the paramedics took her body away. She finally understood. Even if she lived again, she and Ethan could never go back to the way they were. The story's ending had been written the moment she crashed her car. The engagement ceremony wasn't stopped because of this small interruption. Ethan somehow managed to placate Chloe, who soon reappeared, changed and happy, and boarded the yacht. Ria stood on the deck, watching the crew bustling behind her. The wind stretched her shadow long across the fractured surface of the sea, as if it would be swallowed by the waves at any moment. At some point, Chloe also came out onto the deck. Ria looked at that face, and it was like looking at her former self. Chloe's attitude was not friendly as she approached. Did you prepare the sunflowers? She nodded calmly and offered a sincere apology. I'm sorry. I apologize for ruining the mood for your engagement. Chloe frowned. Don't think you can use such cheap tricks to climb the ladder. Ethan is mine. This time, Ria didn't argue. She simply replied in a soft voice, don't worry. From now on, I won't bother you two again. She added, I was too stubborn. I thought he might need me, so I came back. Anyway, I'm sorry. I sincerely wish you both happiness in the future. As she finished speaking, a sudden gust of wind swept across the sea, rocking the entire yacht. The wind was especially fierce on the deck where they stood. Chloe, wearing high heels, lost her balance as a huge wave crashed against the side. She stumbled over the railing and fell directly into the sea. In a desperate attempt to grab onto something to save herself, she panicked and yanked Ria down with her. With a splash, both of them plunged into the water. People on the yacht screamed, and chaos erupted. Help! Someone fell overboard. When Ethan heard the news, he rushed to the deck. Seeing the two figures sinking in the distance, his heart seized with a terrifying panic. The waves churned. The rescue team sent out had already reached the area where they fell. But because Chloe and Ria had been in the water for too long, they had been swept in different directions, far from the yacht. Both had struggled for too long and were suffering from oxygen deprivation. In this life or death situation, time was everything. They could only guarantee saving one of them. Mr. Westwood, Miss Carter, and Miss Lane, we can only save one. The choice 1 out of 2 fell squarely on Ethan's shoulders. His eyes were red. Save them both. Seeing both of them sinking without stopping, the rescuer couldn't help but shout. We can't, Mr. Westwood, we can only save one. Any more hesitation, and we'll lose them both. Ethan's hands clenched uncontrollably, his palms breaking out in a cold sweat. He gritted his teeth and said, word by word, save. Chloe. Instantly, all the rescuers swam towards Chloe. The seawater was bone-chillingly cold. Ria, who had been struggling for her life, heard his answer and stopped completely. When she was 16, she and Ethan had taken swimming lessons together. She could never get the hang of it and swallowed several mouthfuls of water. Ethan's heart ached for her. He held her in his arms and comforted her. It's okay, we won't learn anymore. I'll protect you for the rest of your life. Nothing will ever happen to you. That was the 16-year-old Ethan, but just like her dead self, he was never coming back. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, she gave up the fight, letting herself sink into the depths of the sea, silent and still. 20 minutes later. Ethan watched as Chloe was pulled from the water. He let out a breath of relief and, overwhelmed with the feeling of having her back, pulled her into a tight embrace before handing her over to the medics. As he watched them leave, even though Chloe was safe, his heart remained wound tight like a spring, an unsettling and painful panic gripping him. The rescue team reported that Rhea had missed the optimal rescue window. Her chances were slim to none. They could only do their best to recover her body overnight. Her body? Hearing those words, his heart ached fiercely. Yes, he had watched her sink with his own eyes. Everyone knew she couldn't have survived. She was just an insignificant assistant, yet the moment she gave up and sank, his entire body had tensed, as if his heart had been instantly crushed. He forcibly suppressed the turmoil inside him and walked over to the sunflowers Rhea had brought. As if possessed, he bent down and picked one up, rubbing it gently in his hands. Suddenly, he felt something unusual. Turning it over, he saw a small card attached to the back of each sunflower. He opened it and saw a line of small words. "Ethan Westwood, you big dummy." The familiar, elegant handwriting hit him like a tidal wave, making his whole body jolt. A roaring filled his ears, as if the world were collapsing around him. Anything could be imitated, but handwriting was unique. This was Hope's handwriting. Chapter 10. Ethan felt as if he were facing a formidable enemy. He bent down and picked up the sunflowers one by one. Each one had the same words written on the back. "Ethan Westwood, you big dummy." Memories rushed back like a tidal wave, flooding his mind. When they were children, Hope had cried as she followed behind him, throwing stones at his back as she walked. "Ethan Westwood, you big dummy, I'm never speaking to you again." Later, he had turned around, walked back to her, and crouched down. She had immediately brightened up and climbed onto his back. When it was time for college applications, they had chosen universities in different cities. But later, Ethan had suddenly appeared at Hope's school. She had burst into tears of joy and thrown herself into his arms. "Ethan Westwood, you big dummy, weren't you going to Stanford?" He had stroked the back of her head with immense fondness. "Stanford and UCLA are so far apart. If I'm not here, who's going to protect you?" Later still, when Ethan started his own company, he had less and less time for her. She would spend her days at home painting, and on the back of every painting, she would write the words, "Ethan Westwood, big dummy." Big dummy was her special name for him. No one else dared to call him that. Ethan stared blankly at the sunflowers. He should have suspected something the moment he saw them. How could someone have the exact same habits and preferences as her? How could someone know even their most private stories? He had been too fixated on finding a substitute for Hope that he had completely ignored the fact that the real Hope was right beside him all along. How much pain must she have been in all this time? Ethan fell to his knees, looking out at the vast expanse of the sea, feeling his heart sink into an abyss along with it. He had treated Chloe so gently right in front of her. He had even made her throw away her own favorite painting with her own hands. Ethan Westwood, what have you done to her? Regret and anguish surged through him, threatening to consume him entirely. He was wrong. He had thought that by getting rid of Hope's painting, he would lessen his own pain. He could love Chloe as a complete stand-in for Hope, so he had to erase every trace of Hope's existence from his life. Only then, his subconscious would believe that Hope had never died, that Chloe was Hope, and that she had always been by his side. But it wasn't until that day, when he was alone in his office, that he realized how ridiculous that was. He had habitually looked up to see the painting, and when it was gone, he felt as if his heart had died along with it. When he left his office and saw the painting saved in Rhea's drawer, he couldn't describe how relieved he was. It was on that day that he truly started paying attention to Rhea. He had met her before she joined the company. The rear-end collision had seemed too deliberate, and she had nearly injured Chloe's face, so naturally, he had a bad impression of her. He could tolerate anything else, but he could not let Chloe's face get hurt. Her face was what resembled Hope the most. The first time he saw Chloe, he almost thought Hope had come back to life. But after just 2 days together, he realized that Hope and Chloe were completely different. Hope was energetic and lively, with a personality that made it seem like nothing in the world was too difficult. Just being around her made him feel at ease. When he first lost Hope, Ethan felt as if half of him had died with her. Sometimes he even thought about giving up everything to follow her, but he knew Hope would never want him to do that. Hope, who loved to laugh so much, would surely want him to live and to live happily. So, he threw himself into his work, focusing all his attention on it. Perhaps heaven took pity on him, for he then met someone who looked almost identical to Hope. Even if her personality was a bit arrogant, her face alone was enough for Ethan to overlook everything else. Chapter 11, he poured all his guilt onto Chloe. Once, Hope had said she wanted to go to Lake Como, but because of his dam work, he had postponed it again and again. By the time he was finally free and ready to book the tickets, Hope had the car accident. He told himself it was to make it up to Hope, but it was more to alleviate his own guilt that he had rushed to Lake Como. The lake was beautiful, the air fresh, and the scenery was like a painting. If Hope were here, she would definitely take out her easel and paint, capturing all the beauty in her art. The thought left him with no enthusiasm. Chloe begged for a long time to take pictures, but in the end, he was extremely uncooperative and only allowed a single photo of their backs. And the necklace he gave her, the one Hope had wanted most. He had moved heaven and earth to buy it. When he put it on Chloe, Ethan felt as if he were seeing Hope. She would surely scold him for being extravagant, saying such an expensive necklace was all for show and completely unnecessary. In the past, Hope had always been the one to cook for him. She had never once let him in the kitchen. Ethan personally made noodles, and even though Chloe didn't like them, he watched her eat every last bite. In these ways and more, he frantically searched for traces of Hope. He had invested too much of his heart into Chloe. She had to be Hope. So when Rhea appeared, he only thought of her as another substitute deliberately entering his life. How could he have known that Hope would truly come back to him? She arranged his office supplies according to his habits. She didn't want to throw away the painting. She took drinks for him. She bought her favorite sunflowers. All these things were signals that she was Hope, yet he stubbornly ignored them all. How did she get through these past months? She had been so terrified after the car crash, yet she had to force herself to get behind the wheel just to create a chance encounter with him. How much courage did that take? To watch the love of her life forget her day by day and fall for someone else, what kind of agony was that? And to save Chloe, she was even willing to give up her own life to fulfill his wish. Ethan, oh, Ethan, what have you done? He slammed his fist again and again into the sandy ground. He never imagined he would lose Hope for a second time. No, absolutely not. He scrambled to his feet, his steps unsteady, and strode directly toward the search and rescue boat. I'm going with you to find her. You must bring her back to me, but in the vast, open sea, where could they possibly find Hope? When she went under, the wind had just picked up. A wave crashed over, and in an instant, she was gone. Not to mention her poor swimming skills, even an expert wouldn't dare enter such treacherous waters lightly, especially after she had exhausted herself trying to save Chloe. Gusts of cold wind whipped across the deck. Ethan stood at the bow, letting the wind and rain soak him to the bone. His heart felt like it had been torn open, and the cold air rushed in. No pain could compare to what he felt in that moment. Hope 10 more rescue boats had been dispatched, but they all came back with nothing. As the sky gradually darkened, the search became increasingly difficult. Mark Shaw looked at his boss, standing precariously on the deck. The last time he had seen him this out of control was when Miss Donovan passed away. He didn't understand. Rhea was just a new assistant who hadn't been there long. Why was the CEO so invested in her? The wind and rain grew stronger, but Ethan refused to turn back. He stood stubbornly at the bow, calling Hope's name over and over again. Hope, Hope. Chapter 12. On a luxury liner headed for New York, Hope lay in bed, burning with a high fever. Having been in the water for too long, she had inhaled water, leading to pneumonia and a fever that wouldn't break. Leo Langdon motioned for the accompanying doctor to step back, then gently placed a damp, cool towel on her forehead. This was the Langdon family's private yacht. They were on their way to New York, from where they would take a private jet back home. It was while passing through the waters near Port Sterling that they had unexpectedly found Hope in the water. He had immediately sent a small boat to rescue her and had the onboard doctor treat her. Fortunately, she hadn't been in the water for long, which was how she managed to survive. The yacht had a professional medical team capable of handling emergencies, but if her high fever persisted, it would be extremely dangerous. In her delirium, she kept calling out the name Ethan Westwood. She had a stunning face, yet her clothes had a touch of youthful innocence. Leo's intuition told him this woman had a story. For now, the most important thing was to treat her pneumonia. Once she woke up, everything would become clear. Hope felt as if she were in a dream. In the dream, she had been in a terrible car accident, but then she had been reborn. The dream was bizarre, the story utterly unbelievable. In the end, she had even jumped into the sea to save someone. More and more water engulfed her, making it nearly impossible to breathe. In a daze, someone pulled her up, and she jolted awake. The person beside her saw that she was awake and hurried to inform Leo. Meanwhile, Hope stared blankly at the unfamiliar surroundings, her mind a complete fog. Where am I? What happened to me? Who am I? She couldn't answer a single one of these questions. Even when Leo appeared before her, she continued to stare with wide, confused eyes, completely at a loss. Leo studied the beautiful woman in front of him and waved a hand in front of her face. "You really don't remember anything. Do you remember your name?" A voice inexplicably echoed in Hope's mind, resounding through her thoughts. "Hope, Hope," she murmured aloud. "Hope." Leo was slightly taken aback. "You remember your name, your Hope." She remained silent. Leo chuckled and muttered to himself, "Did I just rescue a simple-minded girl?" This finally got a reaction. Hope looked up and shot him an annoyed glare. "I'm not simple-minded. I was just trying to figure out who I am and why I'm here. I'm not even sure if my name is Hope. When you asked, that name just kept repeating in my head. I think I'm probably named Hope." Seeing her speak a long, fluent sentence, Leo finally relaxed. "That's good. If it's just amnesia, it's manageable. I found you in the waters off Port Sterling. I have no idea how you ended up there all alone. Don't worry if you can't remember now. The doctor said it might be due to the high fever affecting your brain. You'll remember eventually." Hope nodded, only then realizing she hadn't thanked him yet. "Thank you for saving me. I was rude just now. By the way, where are you headed?" Leo smiled. "I'm going to New York. If you don't know where to go, you're welcome to come with me. I plan on seeing all the sights in America. If you want to get off the ship, I can also arrange for someone to take you to shore." As it was, she couldn't remember anything and had no idea what to do. Hearing Leo's plan to travel and see the sights, and since Hope also enjoyed traveling, she decided to join him for the time being. She could figure out the rest later. Chapter 13, 3 years later. In Port Sterling, Ethan Westwood stared in a daze at a piece by the recently sensational artist, LL. This artist had appeared out of nowhere this year, and their debut work was an instant hit. They were scheduled to hold an exhibition in Port Sterling this month. The paintings were delicate, mostly landscapes of America, yet they gave Ethan an inexplicable sense of intimacy. The details in the art were very similar to Hope's, but the style was completely different. For 3 years, not a day had gone by that he hadn't searched for any sign of Hope. As long as her body was never found, there was a chance she was still alive. The office door was suddenly pushed open, and Chloe walked in slowly, carrying a cup of coffee. She carefully placed it on Ethan's desk and then spoke. "Ethan, you haven't been back to the villa in a long time. It's my birthday today. Can you come home and be with me?" Ethan didn't look up from the painting in his hand, his brow furrowed. "Didn't I tell you not to come to the company to find me anymore? I've already given you the money. I won't be going back to the villa, and you are not to look for me again." For years, every time he thought about how he had missed Hope because of Chloe, he was consumed by regret and pain. Even though she had a face identical to Hope's, she was not Hope. He was sober now, and he knew he could never again use anyone as a substitute. After leaving the yacht that day, he had canceled the engagement and given Chloe a huge sum of money, telling her to leave. But she had relentlessly pestered him, showing up at the company every few days. He was now utterly fed up. "Ethan, we were so good together before. Why did you break up with me just because Rhea Lane fell into the sea? I really didn't pull her in, Ethan's face darkened. He snatched the coffee cup from the desk and slammed it onto the floor. "Get out. I don't want to say it a second time." Seeing the sudden change in his expression, Chloe didn't dare say another word and shakily left the room. Behind her, Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the painting. He picked up the phone and called Mark Shaw. "Find out LL's identity." At the airport, Hope was immediately captivated by the local snacks of Port Sterling the moment she deplaned. She waved excitedly at Leo Langdon. "Leo, come quick, can you buy this for me? I'm starving." Seeing her childlike demeanor, Leo couldn't help but laugh. You didn't touch the food on the plane, and now you want to eat street food. If your fans found out that the famous LL is such a foodie, your image would be ruined. Hope picked out snacks, popping the appealing ones into her mouth. I'm so sick of airline food. There's nothing like the food back home. And you, if your grandmother hadn't summoned you, who knows how long you would have stayed in America. Is America really that great? In my opinion, it's not half as good as Port Sterling. They had stayed in America for 3 years. Hope had fully utilized her talent for painting, and her published works became an instant sensation. Now, her paintings sold for astronomical prices both at home and abroad. Unfortunately, her memory never returned. She only remembered her name was Hope and nothing else. Leo had taken her to see doctors, but they said her brain scans were all normal and they couldn't determine the cause. After extensive tests, it was Hope who decided to give up. In her words, enjoying the present was what mattered most. She was happy now, so there was no need to dwell on who she used to be. If there was anyone who knew her, they would probably find her on their own now that she was back in the country. After buying a mountain of food, the two of them finally got into the private car that had come to pick them up. Chapter 14. Over the years, Hope's cheerful and outgoing personality had forged a sibling-like bond with Leo. Mrs. Langdon, Leo's grandmother, was also exceptionally fond of her, treating her like her own granddaughter. They had returned this time because the elderly woman missed them dearly. When they arrived at the Langdon villa, Mrs. Langdon was already waiting at the door, greeting them with unrestrained affection. At the dinner table, Hope presented the gifts she had bought for Mrs. Langdon one by one, making the old woman beam with joy. My dear Hope, these are all secondary. When are you and Leo going to get married and give me a great-grandchild? That's what would truly make your grandma happy. Hope blushed and lowered her head. Leo, sitting beside her, smoothly intervened. Grandma, don't you worry about that. We came back not just to see you, but also to hold an art exhibition for Hope. Hope had put a lot of effort into this exhibition. Not only was the venue at the scenic, but somewhat remote Falling Blossom Lake, but every piece on display was something she had personally painted during her travels in America and brought back herself. After dinner, Hope stood alone on the balcony, enjoying the breeze. For some reason, she felt a profound familiarity with Port Sterling. It was a feeling as if she had always lived here. Although she had no memory of the city's streets or sights, she felt an inexplicable sense of closeness. Leo had told her he found her in the waters off Port Sterling, so it was very likely she was from here. She just didn't understand how she could have fallen into the sea. Moreover, during her years in America, though her memory hadn't returned, she frequently dreamed of the same man. He had exquisite features, and his eyes, when they looked at her, were filled with a deep and sorrowful affection. Every time she met that gaze, she felt an unbearable heartache. Perhaps it was connected to how she ended up in the ocean. What are you thinking about? Leo's voice suddenly came from behind, startling her. She turned around and made a playful face at him. I was thinking about inspiration for a painting, and you scared it all away. That's a huge loss, you know. Leo looked apologetic. I'm so sorry. To make it up to you, I'll have to offer myself in marriage. Hope laughed and pushed him away. No thanks, you eat too much. I can't afford to feed you. They both burst into laughter. Though it was a joke, they both understood the meaning behind it. After living together for 3 years, she had seen all the good he had done for her. It would be a lie to say she had no feelings for him. But for some reason, she just couldn't cross that line. Before, she thought it didn't matter if she didn't know who she was. But ever since she started dreaming frequently about that man, she felt more and more that she couldn't continue living in this haze. At the very least, she had to find out who she was before she could decide whether to accept Leo's feelings. Preparations for the exhibition were in full swing, and Hope often went to the site to supervise the work herself. One day, after inspecting the site, she received a call from Leo just as she was leaving. He said he was in the area and could swing by to pick her up. The family had plenty of cars for her to use, but for some reason, even though Hope knew how to drive, she would start trembling with fear the moment she sat in the driver's seat. After several failed attempts, Hope gave up. Leo had said the family didn't lack for drivers, and if all else failed, he could personally chauffeur her. After hanging up, Hope stood by the entrance, looking at her sketches while she waited. A gust of wind blew, and in a moment of carelessness, her sketches scattered all over the ground. She had to bend down to pick them up, one by one. In the distance, a black Maybach quietly approached and stopped right behind her. Chapter 15, inside the car, Ethan Westwood looked at the person crouching to pick up sketches and couldn't believe his eyes. The person who had been missing for 3 years had just appeared right in front of him. He quickly opened the car door and ran towards her, his steps frantic. As he got closer, he pulled her into a tight embrace. "Hope you're back." Hope was terrified by the person who had suddenly rushed out from behind her. When she turned, she finally saw his face clearly. It was the man who frequently appeared in her dreams. Hope was so shocked, she stumbled back a few steps and forcefully pushed him away. "Let go." Ethan immediately released her, his eyes filled with anxiety. "What's wrong? Did I hurt you?" "Hope, where have you been? Why didn't you come find me when you came back?" Hope was dizzy from his barrage of questions, but she understood from his words that this person must know her. She gathered her sketches and then looked up at him calmly. "Do you know me?" Her first impression of this man was not good, but for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to dislike him. And, judging by his clothes and demeanor, he didn't seem like a rude person. Why was he being so forward with her? The light in Ethan's eyes instantly dimmed. He looked at her, a mist forming over his eyes. "Hope, I know you're angry that I didn't recognize you. It's my fault. You can hit me, you can yell at me, but you can't pretend you don't know me." Hope was even more confused. She frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. "Sir, I don't know what you're saying. I genuinely don't know you. I had an accident 3 years ago and forgot everything that happened before. So I'm sorry, but I don't understand a single word you're saying." Amnesia? How could she have amnesia? Did that mean she had forgotten everything that had happened before? The memories of over a decade of love. The events after the car crash, she didn't remember any of it. Ethan looked at the woman before him, momentarily at a loss for words. He had imagined their reunion 1,000 times, but never like this. But whether she had amnesia or not, she was still his hope. As for her memories, they could slowly rediscover them together. With that thought, Ethan seemed to relax a bit. He reached out to take her hand. "It's okay, I can tell you about the past slowly. Let's go home." Hope nervously pulled her hand back. "No, thank you, we're strangers, how can I go with you?" As she said this, she turned to leave. Ethan quickly followed, trying to grab her hand again when a loud shout came from behind. "Let her go." Hearing Leo's voice, Hope let out a sigh of relief. She rushed over to him and hid behind him, not looking at Ethan again. And when Ethan saw how she relied on another man while being so wary and distant with him, his heart felt as if it had been pierced by a sharp knife, the pain excruciating. "Hope," Leo shielded Hope, his eyes filled with hostility as he looked at Ethan. "Sir, please have some self-respect." Upon seeing Leo, Ethan's expression had already changed. He looked at him coldly, like a lion zeroing in on its prey. "Self-respect. Hope is my fiancé. I'd like to ask you, who is the one who needs to have some self-respect?" Leo sneered. "Is that so? Hope has been by my side day and night for 3 years. What kind of fiancé would be separated from her for 3 years? Chapter 16, the tension between them was palpable, neither willing to back down. Finally, Hope peeked out from behind Leo and spoke. "Sir, I don't care what our relationship was before. Right now, I truly don't know you, so I can't go with you. If you have something to tell me about my memories later, you can contact me, but please stop harassing me." With that, she took a piece of paper from her pocket, wrote down her phone number, and placed it in Ethan's hand. Then she tugged on Leo's sleeve, signaling for him to leave. Leo nodded, put a protective arm around her, and walked her to a nearby Porsche. He opened the door for her and watched her get in. As he walked to the driver's side, he glanced back at Ethan. The animosity in both their eyes was chilling. The car started and quickly disappeared down the road. Ethan looked at the elegant, familiar handwriting on the paper in his hand, his fingers tightening. Hope was back. The hope he had thought about and longed for 3 years was back, but there was an annoying man by her side. The mere thought of it made his blood boil, a furious fire raging in his chest. For 3 years, they had been together day and night. He got to see her smile every day, to hear her voice every day. The thought of it drove him mad with jealousy. It didn't matter. She was back now. He would do whatever it took to get her back by his side. In the car on the way back to the Langdon estate, Hope's heart was still pounding. The man who had appeared so suddenly for some reason, just seeing him brought on an uncontrollable heartache. And his affectionate gaze was like a branding iron, searing her eyes. She remembered what he had said to Leo that she was his fiancée. Could it be that they really knew each other? Hope sighed heavily. If she thought about it anymore, her head would split open. She didn't dare to think further. Seeing her worried expression, Leo knew she was troubled by what had just happened. He offered comfort. "Hope, don't worry about what happened today. I'll look into your past for you. From now on, it's better if you don't go out alone." He hadn't anticipated a situation like this, which was why he had let her go out by herself. It seemed he would have to be more careful in the future. Hope nodded, but her mind was filled with the image of Ethan's grief-stricken face. When she got back to the Langdon house, she went straight upstairs to bed without eating dinner. That night, as expected, she had another dream. In the dream, she was in a speeding car. The next second, the entire car flipped off the road. The person inside was thrown out. But when she got closer, she saw that the face was not hers. Hope was so frightened she woke up from the dream, frantically turning on the light and gulping down a large glass of water. Could it be that, before she fell into the water, she had also been in a car crash? No wonder she was so afraid of driving. But why did the person in the car look completely different from her? Perhaps the key to all these mysteries lay with the man she had met today. She had made up her mind. She had to see him again. The next morning, when she came downstairs, both Mrs. Langdon and Leo were gone. She asked a servant and learned that Mrs. Langdon had suddenly fallen ill the night before and had been taken to the hospital early that morning. Leo hadn't told her so as not to disturb her rest. Chapter 17, Hope felt a pang of guilt, realizing how thoughtless she had been. She quickly asked the servant to prepare some ingredients, personally cooked a pot of porridge, and had a driver take her to the hospital. When she arrived, Mrs. Langdon was asleep. Hope placed the porridge beside the bed, then took the breakfast she had brought for Leo into the adjoining sitting room and urged him to eat. "Is Grandma okay? What did the doctor say?" Leo frowned. "The doctor said Grandma is getting old, and her body's functions are declining. They don't recommend surgery at this point, so we'll stick with conservative treatment." Hope offered a few words of comfort. Seeing his exhausted appearance, she guessed he hadn't slept at all the previous night. She insisted he go home to shower and change, promising she would stay and watch over things. Leo was reluctant at first, but after a few stern looks from Hope, he obediently went home. The old woman was still sleeping. Hope took a cup and went out to get some water. As she passed through the hallway, she happened to see Ethan coming out of a psychotherapy clinic. She didn't know if it was a coincidence, but she never expected to run into him at the hospital. Evidently, Ethan saw her too. He said a few words to his assistant and then walked quickly towards her. Hope, she was still not used to Ethan's familiarity and took a couple of steps back to maintain some distance. "Hello." Her deliberate distance was like a thorn in Ethan's side, but even so, there was nothing he could do. "Hope, why are you at the hospital? Are you not feeling well?" Hope pulled her hand away and held up the cup. "It's not me. Mrs. Langdon is sick. I'm here to take care of her. Sir, I don't believe I know your last name." The person he had loved for years was right in front of him but couldn't recognize him. Ethan was now tasting the full bitterness of that pain. Sometimes he wondered if Hope was just acting, pretending to have amnesia to punish him. But her eyes were so clear and innocent, she had genuinely forgotten him. Ethan lowered his head slightly. "My last name is Westwood. You can call me Ethan." Hope nodded. "Mr. Westwood, why are you at the hospital?" He paused, then said, "Because I lost the person I love. So every day I'm tormented by regret and pain. These emotions have taken over my mind, and I need a therapist to help me control them." Hope instinctively felt that what Ethan was talking about was related to her. They turned and walked towards the end of the corridor. Ethan looked at the small figure beside him, his heart melting. "Hope, have you been well these past few years?" Hope smiled and nodded. "I've been very happy. Leo and I traveled all over America, saw mountains and rivers, and experienced many different cultures." At the mention of Leo, Ethan's brow furrowed. "Are you two together?" Chapter 18, for some reason, even though she knew nothing about the man in front of her, when he mistook her and Leo for a couple, she felt an irresistible urge to clarify. "No, he saved me. We are very good friends. I see him as family." Hearing this, the tension on Ethan's face visibly eased. When they reached the water dispenser, Ethan took the cup from her hand without a word, filled it, wiped it dry, and then handed it back to her. "Be careful, it's hot." The gesture was so natural, as if he had done it for her 1,000 times before, and Hope didn't find it strange at all. She took the cup, said thank you, and then asked, "Mr. Westwood, can you tell me about our past?" Ethan was about to speak when a nurse's voice came from the other end of the corridor. "Miss Hope, Mrs. Langdon is awake." Hearing this, Hope immediately started to rush back to the room. Remembering Ethan was still there, she quickly said her goodbyes. "Mr. Westwood, I have to go, we can talk another time." With that, she ran down the hallway and into the hospital room. Ethan watched her retreating back, a faint smile unconsciously gracing his lips. It was wonderful. His Hope was alive, healthy and well. In the hospital room, Mrs. Langdon had just woken up and was anxiously asking for Hope. Hope took the water she had just fetched and helped Mrs. Langdon take a sip. She then brought over the porridge she had prepared, but as she was about to feed her, the old woman pressed down on her hand. "Hope, my dear, Grandma has something to tell you." Mrs. Langdon was usually a cheerful person who loved to joke. It was rare for her to speak so seriously. Hope knew she had something important to say, so she sat down properly. "Grandma, I'm listening." Mrs. Langdon patted her hand. "Hope, Grandma has always been very fond of you. You know me, I never judge people by their family background or status, only by their character and heart. You are a kind and good-hearted girl. With you by Leo's side, Grandma can rest easy." Listening to Mrs. Langdon's tone, Hope had an inkling of what was coming next, but she didn't interrupt, just listened quietly. "As for me, I don't have much time left. My only wish is to see you two get married before I go. That boy, Leo, I know his heart better than anyone. He has feelings for you, but he's afraid of making things awkward between you two if he says it. So, Grandma will say it for him. Hope, my dear, are you willing to marry into our Langdon family? Marry Leo." It was something Hope had never considered. She had always seen Leo as family, like a brother. With him, she could be herself, speak her mind freely. What she felt for him was mostly gratitude. She had never thought about marrying Leo. Chapter 19, Hope knew that Mrs. Langdon's health was fragile and she couldn't handle any agitation. She couldn't refuse her directly, so she tried to persuade her gently. "Grandma, you're going to be fine. Let's take things one step at a time. Leo and I will always be here with you." Fortunately, Mrs. Langdon didn't press for an answer. After eating a little porridge, she fell asleep. Hope felt overwhelmed. She had planned to find some time to talk properly with Ethan, but now with Mrs. Langdon's illness and the impending art exhibition, she would have to wait until after the exhibition was over. Mrs. Langdon stayed in the hospital for a week before going home. Hope finally had time to focus all her energy on preparing for her exhibition. On the opening day of the exhibition, all the city's elites were in attendance, eager to see the true face of the artist LL. Unfortunately, LL did not make an appearance, instead playing a recording of her voice thanking everyone for coming. Although they didn't get to see LL in person, the main purpose was to appreciate the art, so there wasn't too much disappointment. Hope mingled with the crowd, listening to people's comments on her paintings without saying a word. In a corner, Chloe stood transfixed before a painting titled Yearning. This was the artist Ethan had recently taken an interest in. According to Mark Shaw, every time one of her works was publicly sold, Ethan would buy it, no matter the cost. This LL had a delicate brushstroke, suggesting a female artist. Ever since Rhea Lane left, Ethan had treated her like a stranger. Yet this stranger, LL, had him completely captivated. Chloe had come this time to see for herself what was so special about this LL that she could mesmerize Ethan without even showing her face. She turned to walk away and suddenly saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Rhea. Chloe couldn't believe it. She pushed through the crowd and walked straight up to Hope. It really was her, the Rhea who had appeared and disappeared so suddenly. If it weren't for going to talk to her, she wouldn't have fallen into the sea. So, if she was pulled down, she deserved it. "Rhea, what are you doing here?" Hope was startled by the voice behind her, but since the name being called was Rhea, she assumed it had nothing to do with her and ignored it. But the next second, the person walked right in front of her, blocking her path. "What are you hiding from? I'm talking to you, didn't you hear?" Hope was usually good-natured, but she was quite annoyed by this person's rudeness. She looked up at the woman in front of her, and her heart suddenly clenched. This person looked so similar to the one in her dream who had been in the car crash, but it was only a resemblance. Hope knew clearly that this was not the person from her dream. The person in her dream had a mole near the corner of her eye, and her gaze wasn't this sharp. Could it be that they knew each other before? Chapter 20. Hope looked at her and asked quizzically, "Hello, who are you? Have we met before?" Chloe was momentarily stunned. The person in front of her was clearly Rhea, but why was her gaze so pure, so clear, so full of confusion? This was not the look she should be getting. And from the way she spoke, it seemed she didn't recognize her. Could it be that when she fell into the sea, something happened to her brain? Chloe blinked and changed her tone. "You don't remember me?" Hope shook her head. "I'm sorry, I had an accident, so I don't remember much from before. If we knew each other, could you tell me about the past?" Hearing this, Chloe smiled with relief. So she really had forgotten everything. That made things much easier. When Rhea was around before, Ethan had treated her differently. Now that she was back, plus this LL, there was no place left for her. She was at this exhibition, so was it possible she had already seen Ethan? Chloe frowned, then put on a different expression as she looked at Hope. "You and I were two peas in a pod, both in the same boat." Hope looked at her, confused. "What do you mean by that?" Chloe gave a sarcastic smile. "Because you and I are both just someone else's substitute." She explained the whole story, but only the part about her being Rhea. In Chloe's version, she was Rhea Lane, a woman who had deliberately gotten close to Ethan. Because she had similar hobbies and mannerisms to Ethan's late fiancé, she had received special attention from him. Because she had tried too hard to imitate Hope, she had started to believe she was Hope after losing her memory. When Chloe finished speaking, Hope felt as if she had been hit by a massive shock, but she didn't know whether to believe her or not. If she was Rhea, why was Ethan so insistent on calling her Hope? Could it be that he really was using her as a substitute for Hope? Was she Rhea, or was she Hope? Seeing that she seemed unconvinced, Chloe took her phone out of her pocket, found an old photo, and held it up for her to see. "See clearly? This is Hope Donovan, the woman who looks so much like me. One of us looks like her, the other acts like her. We're both just her substitutes." The person in the photo did indeed have a face that was strikingly similar to Chloe's, with a bright, pure, and innocent smile that was a complete contrast to her own cold beauty. She remembered Leah once saying that her appearance and personality were worlds apart. Strangers saw her and thought she was an ice queen, but in reality, she was warm and cheerful, like a little sun. So that was it. That was it. After Chloe left, Hope remained standing in the same spot, staring blankly. She wanted to know what had really happened between her and Ethan. Why was he so convinced she was Hope? If it was about looks, wasn't Chloe a better match? Chapter 21, since they were both substitutes, why didn't he choose the one who looked most like her? Hope couldn't solve these mysteries, nor did she want to. Chloe's appearance had thrown her thoughts into chaos. Staying at the exhibition would only add to her frustration. She decided to leave. Just as she reached the entrance, she ran into Ethan walking towards her. Seeing Hope, Ethan looked overjoyed, a rare smile appearing on his usually icy face. "Hope, you're here for the LL exhibition too. Speaking of which, LL's artistic style is very similar to yours." Hope frowned in annoyance. Her impression of Ethan had now hit rock bottom. Before, she just thought he was a bit strange. Now, she thought he was downright twisted. His lover dies, and he goes around looking for substitutes. Everyone is an individual who would want to be someone else's replacement. Or maybe he had just moved on and was using the substitute as an excuse. What a waste of such a handsome face, only to be a scoundrel. She looked at him with cold eyes. "Mr. Westwood, we're not familiar enough for you to use my first name. In the future, please call me Miss Langdon." Ethan froze. "Miss Langdon, why? Are you changing your name?" Although Hope wasn't sure if she was Rhea or someone else, she no longer wanted to use the name of Ethan's fiancé. She decided that from now on, in public, she would call herself Hope Langdon. She pushed past him and continued walking. "Yes, from now on, my last name is Langdon. I don't want to have any connection with you. Please don't come looking for me again. I don't want to see you." Ethan looked as if he had been dealt a massive blow. He didn't understand why Hope was suddenly so hostile towards him. Just a short while ago, she had said she wanted to learn about their past from him. What had happened in between? Had she remembered her time as Rhea? Ethan reached out to grab her hand, only to be ruthlessly shaken off again. "Mr. Westwood, please have some self-respect." With that, she strode away without a backward glance. Behind her, Ethan watched her disappearing back, his heart breaking. So this was how it felt to be misunderstood by the one you love. It was agonizing. What about his hope? Did she feel this same pain during the countless times he had misunderstood her, believing she was deliberately trying to get close to him? In the following days, Ethan tried to find all sorts of opportunities to get close to Hope. Because he frequently ran into her at the exhibition center, he assumed she worked there and kept going to the entrance hoping for a chance encounter. He would send flowers to the center or buy LL's paintings to give to her, but these gifts were always intercepted and disposed of by Leo before they could reach her. After a while, the staff at the exhibition center all recognized him. When he was leaving, some ambitious women would boldly approach him. "Mr. Westwood, you're here again. There are many excellent paintings today. Would you like me to give you a tour?" Chapter 22, Ethan's face was as cold as ice. He didn't bother to say a single word to them, and Mark Shaw would quickly shoo them away. After a few attempts, no one dared to approach him anymore. However, in the days that followed, Hope seemed to be deliberately avoiding him. She rarely came to the exhibition center. Even when she did, Leo was with her. They would rush in and out. Mark Shaw had never seen his boss so invested in a woman, except for the late Miss Donovan. That night, Hope returned to the Langdon house only to realize she had left her manuscript at the exhibition center. It was a very important manuscript. If it were leaked, it could cause serious problems. Unfortunately, Leo had taken Mrs. Langdon to the hospital for a checkup, so she had to take a taxi to the exhibition center herself. By the time she arrived, it was already 10 at night. Most of the staff had gone home. Fortunately, she had fingerprint access. She let herself in, retrieved the manuscript, and headed out. It was only when she got outside that she realized the taxi she had taken had already left. The exhibition center was in a remote location. To get another taxi, she would have to walk down a deserted mountain road to the main street. Hope was actually quite afraid of the dark, but she thought to herself that this was a society ruled by law, so it should be fine. She turned on her phone's flashlight and bravely started walking. After walking less than 200 meters, even the streetlights were out. The sound of the sea breeze was particularly eerie in the silent night. Hope wrapped her coat tighter around herself and quickened her pace towards the light. She seemed to hear footsteps behind her. She turned to look but saw nothing. Perhaps she was just scaring herself. She wanted to call Leo, but the area was so remote there was no signal. She just had to hold on a little longer. It was only 500 meters. Hope quickened her pace. The figure behind her seemed to be getting closer. Just as she was about to turn around again, a pair of hands shot out and pulled her into the bushes at the side of the road. The world spun, and Hope fell onto the grassy ground. Her phone was thrown to the side. Hope panicked and tried to scream for help, but a hand clamped firmly over her mouth. "Don't move. If you move again, I'll kill you." Hope was terrified. In the darkness, she couldn't see the person's face, only that their breath reeked of alcohol, as if they were drunk. "Let me go. Someone is on their way to pick me up. If he finds you, he won't let you off easy." The person just laughed sinisterly, and a hand began to creep up under her dress. This place was rarely frequented by people, especially at night. Was she going to be violated like this? Just as Hope was sinking into despair, a familiar figure suddenly appeared from behind. The newcomer kicked the person on top of her away and immediately took off his coat to wrap around her. Mark Shaw, who followed closely behind, grabbed the assailant and pinned him to the ground with his foot. "You dare touch Mr. Westwood's person? You must have a death wish." Ethan Westwood. Chapter 23, Hope was trembling all over, unable to do anything but let Ethan hold her and lead her back to level ground. She tried to speak, but the moment she opened her mouth, tears started streaming down her face. If Ethan hadn't shown up, what would have happened to her? Seeing Hope so pale with fright, a surge of rage completely consumed Ethan. He turned and ordered Mark Shaw, "Throw him into the sea, just don't kill him." The man immediately started wailing and begging for mercy, but Mark Shaw paid him no mind, signaling for the bodyguards who had followed to take him away. Ethan kept his arm around Hope the entire time, carefully helping her into his car as if she were a fragile treasure. "Hope, don't be afraid, I'm here." Hope sat in the car for a long time before she finally calmed down. She pushed Ethan away and thanked him, her voice trembling. "Thank you for what you did today." Ethan looked at her tear-streaked face, his heart aching as if it were being fried in a pan. Damn it all, how could he let her go through something like this? Was this how Leah was taking care of her? After a long silence, he finally suppressed his anger and spoke. "It's late now. It's not safe for you to go back alone. Let me take you back to the Langdon estate." At this point, Hope had no reason to refuse. She nodded in agreement. The car drove very slowly. Whether it was intentional on Ethan's part or not, they seemed to hit a red light at every intersection. He kept glancing at her, his eyes filled with an indescribable emotion. If all of this was just an act, then his acting skills were truly masterful. Hope didn't want to meet his gaze, so she turned her head and closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. An hour later, the car finally stopped in front of the Langdon estate. After getting out of the car, Hope thanked him. "Mr. Westwood, thank you for bringing me back. I know you've been hanging around the exhibition recently, but it's become a nuisance to me. Please stop doing that in the future. In any case, thank you for tonight." With that, she pushed open the gate and walked in without waiting for his response. It wasn't until she was sitting on the sofa in the living room that Hope came to her senses. When she looked down, she realized Ethan's coat was still on her shoulders. She quickly took it off and rushed back outside, but the car was long gone. She would have to return it to him next time. She just didn't know if they would ever have a chance to meet again. At the villa, Chloe stared at her phone screen, which repeatedly showed her unanswered messages, the hatred on her face swelling like a tide. Why? They were both substitutes, so why was Ethan so obsessed with Rhea? Before Rhea appeared, she had been happy. Ethan would listen to whatever she said, spoiling her until she became the most envied woman in the city, even though she had long known that all of this was because of her resemblance to Hope. But Hope was dead. No one could ever threaten her position. With this face alone, she could keep Ethan wrapped around her finger for the rest of her life. Chapter 24, but then this damn Rhea had to show up. From the day she joined the company, Chloe knew she was trouble. She never expected her to completely capture Ethan's heart. She used to be a luxury goods sales assistant with nothing to her name. But after meeting Ethan, she had taken a huge step up in life. To go back to her old life now was absolutely impossible. If only Rhea would disappear. Then she would be the one and only substitute in the world. Ever since the dangerous incident outside the exhibition, Hope had rarely gone there. She spent most of her time at the Langdon estate with Mrs. Langdon. Even though she was trying to keep a low profile, somehow Chloe found her address and was waiting at her gate early in the morning. When the servant informed Hope, she was a bit surprised. They had no connection, so how did she find her house? Although she didn't want to have much contact with her, since she was already at the door, she supposed she should see her. Led by a servant, Chloe walked into the villa's living room. As she looked at the understated but priceless furnishings, her fingers clenched and unclenched at her sides. Why? They were both substitutes, so why was her luck so good? The Langdon family's wealth was on par with the Westwoods, a prominent name in the city. Since she already had the Langdons' support, why was she still hung up on Ethan? Seeing Hope, Chloe got straight to the point. "Miss Lane, I hope you will stop seeing Ethan from now on. I know I have no right to ask you to leave the city, but you should know that since you've returned, Ethan's entire focus has been on you, which has hurt me. Don't you already have Leo Langdon? Why do you still have to provoke Ethan?" Hope had been about to ask the servant to prepare coffee, but seeing the situation, she realized it wasn't necessary. So she had come all the way to the Langdon estate just to accuse her and tell her to stay away from Ethan. But she seemed to have misunderstood the situation. It was Ethan who was pestering her, not the other way around. She shook her head. "Miss Carter, I don't know what your relationship is with Mr. Westwood, but let me tell you, I have never tried to get close to him. In fact, his persistence has become a bother to me. If you can, please have a word with him. Also, this is a big city. I can go wherever I want, and it has nothing to do with you. If there's nothing else, please leave." With that, she stood up and gestured for the servant to show her out. Chloe's face was livid. She remembered the old Rhea being submissive, never daring to talk back no matter what she said. After losing her memory, she was like a different person. She stood up to leave, but her gaze suddenly fell on a freshly pressed suit hanging nearby. She recognized that suit. It was Ethan's chapter 25. Chloe's anger instantly reached its peak. She had just said she had no contact with Ethan, so why was his coat in her house? Moreover, Ethan was a known germaphobe. He never let anyone touch his personal belongings. She spun around and glared at Hope. You still say you haven't been in contact with him? How do you explain this coat? Hope turned and remembered that she had asked the servant to press the coat that day, intending to have it sent back to Ethan. She hadn't expected Chloe to show up at that exact moment. Since she was Ethan's woman, it was better to have her return it. Hope took the coat, bagged it, and handed it to her. Since you've brought it up, please return it for me. And please, don't disturb my life again. Chloe took the coat, still fuming. She gritted her teeth and shot Hope a nasty look. I'll be watching you. As long as you're in this city, I'll be watching you. After throwing out this threat, Chloe stormed off. Hope sat on the sofa, rubbing her temples wearily. It seemed this city was a place of trouble. It was a shame Mrs. Langdon's health was poor. Otherwise, she would have flown back to America as soon as the exhibition was over. When Leo returned, he saw her looking troubled. He smiled and pulled a handful of candy from his bag, offering it to her. Who made our Hope angry? Have some candy and smile. She didn't want to burden Leo with her troubles, so she just shook her head. I'm just a bit tired from being back. Although this city is nice, I think I'm more suited to San Francisco. Leo's eyes sparkled. You want to go back to America? Hope nodded, and then saw Leo smile. If you want to go back, we can go after we've taken care of things here. The medical care there is better. We can take Grandma with us. If they took Mrs. Langdon with them, it was likely they would stay in America and not come back. Hope looked at the handsome, gentle man before her. Sometimes she wondered if she was being too greedy. She had him protecting and caring for her, yet she was still chasing after the hazy dreams in her heart. Perhaps, as Mrs. Langdon wished, being with Leo would be a good choice. Hope was starting to waver. She was so stressed and annoyed by Ethan and Chloe that for the first time, she felt the urge to run away. She would think about all this after the exhibition was over. Time flew by, and as the exhibition neared its end, Hope finally breathed a sigh of relief. If the exhibition could conclude successfully, her trip back to her home country wouldn't have been in vain. But just as the media reported the successful conclusion of the exhibition, a post slandering LL suddenly appeared online. It claimed to be about LL, but it was more of a personal attack on Hope. Chapter 26, it accused her of using her position to plagiarize LL's creative inspiration, stealing manuscript drafts that were identical in style to LL's. The evidence was a manuscript with a style and brushwork extremely similar to LL's. Hope looked at the online post and immediately recognized it as the manuscript she had gone to the exhibition center to retrieve that night. After bringing it back, she had been preoccupied with other things and had left it on the living room table. The servants in the house knew her habits and would never touch her drafts. The only other person who could have taken it was Chloe, who had visited that day. She must have stolen the draft while Hope was getting the coat, then posted it online with a fabricated story. Since LL hadn't appeared at the exhibition, it gave her the perfect opportunity to cause trouble. The post also included many photos of her frequently entering and leaving the exhibition, with the last one being a picture of her rushing away with the manuscript that night. Once the news broke, Hope was attacked from all sides. Shameless, how dare she copy LL's work? Support original work. People like her, who use their position to plagiarize, must not be tolerated. I heard this woman came back from America. She should go back to America. Don't pollute our air here. People online were clamoring to dox her, and some even threatened to splash red paint on her door. Fortunately, she had no life history in the city for the past few years, and with a little maneuvering from Leo, the mob couldn't trace her back to the Langdon family. But the overwhelming online abuse still affected her mood. Leo scrolled through the photos, so angry he threw his phone. This is all fabricated. I'll have someone investigate right away and see who is so bold as to target you. Hope waved her hand. No need to investigate. I think I know who it is. After she told Leo about that day, his face darkened several shades. This woman is completely insane. Hope sighed. She couldn't agree more. But unfortunately, she was the one who had gotten entangled with such a person. It wouldn't be hard to clear her name, but it would mean revealing her identity, which she had kept hidden. After that, All her actions in the city would be scrutinized, which would be very inconvenient. Moreover, if she proved her identity, Chloe's theft and slander would be confirmed. She had already seen how terrifying online mobs could be and didn't want that to be turned on someone else. She would just endure it. Once this period passed and she returned to America, it would be out of sight, out of mind. Her phone suddenly rang. Hope picked it up and saw it was an unknown number. She hadn't given this number to anyone else since returning to the country, besides the Langdons. Who could it be? Right, there was still Ethan. Hope didn't know why he was calling. To condemn her, to ask her why she plagiarized LL's work, since LL was an artist he admired. She initially didn't want to answer, but after a long pause, Hope pressed the call button. Hope, are you okay? Chapter 27. Unexpectedly, Ethan's first words were of concern for her well-being. This caught Hope completely off guard. She thought for a moment before replying. Mr. Westwood, are you calling to question me about the plagiarism? On the other end of the line, Ethan's voice became firm and powerful. No, Hope. I believe you. I know you didn't plagiarize. She couldn't quite describe the feeling. She had seen so much online abuse that to suddenly have someone other than Leo believe her left her a bit stunned. After a long silence, Hope thanked him softly. Thank you for believing in me. Ethan's voice was deep. How could I not believe you? I will always believe you. Do you need my help to handle this? I can. Hope cut him off. No, that's not necessary. I'll handle it myself. In any case, thank you for your concern, but I don't want to be involved with you anymore. With that, she hung up the phone. Beside her, Leo looked at her with a heavy heart. Although Hope constantly rejected Ethan, in her subconscious, she had a favorable impression of him. Otherwise, given her personality, she would have already dealt with this matter in the most drastic way possible. Perhaps only by returning to America, soon could he feel at ease. The situation did not develop as Hope had imagined. The online abuse not only continued, but intensified. Some even claimed that Hope was a homewrecker who had broken up Ethan and Chloe, and then latched onto Leo Langdon to get a cushy job at the exhibition center. Some even started attacking the Langdon family. She could tolerate insults directed at herself, but she would not stand for the Langdon family being dragged into it. She had originally planned to let Chloe off the hook, but what she had done was too much. She could no longer tolerate it. She asked Leo to notify the media and hold a press conference. The main purpose of the press conference was to reveal LL's true identity. The news caused an uproar throughout the city. Everyone was eager to see LL appear in person and shut down the plagiarist. For those who hadn't seen LL before, the anticipation for this press conference was through the roof. On that day, both Ethan and Chloe were in attendance. Ethan sat in the front row, in the best seat, waiting quietly for LL to appear. Once everyone was ready, Hope took the stage. Seeing Hope, the audience was first taken aback, and then a wave of murmurs began. She still has the nerve to come to LL's press conference? The audacity. Exactly. Their painting styles are so similar. She better not try to deny she copied. But seriously, this woman is really beautiful. Her dress is so simple, but on her, it has a unique quality. Look at her, so cold and aloof, she doesn't look like someone who would plagiarize. What do you know? You can't judge a book by its cover. Let's just wait for LL to come out and see what she has to say. Chapter 28. Hope sat down at the microphone and signaled for the assistant to start the presentation. It displayed all her paintings and manuscripts from over the years. As everyone was engrossed in the art, Hope addressed the crowd directly. Regarding the recent online rumors of me plagiarizing LL, I originally did not want to take up public resources. However, the situation has escalated and implicated my family, so today I will make a formal statement. Since I began painting, I have never engaged in plagiarism or imitation. The works displayed under the name LL are all my own independent creations, because I am LL. When he heard that Hope was LL, Ethan, sitting in the audience, maintained a composed expression, but his eyes were filled with an undisguisable admiration and pride. She had done it. She had finally become the person she always wanted to be. He had been suspicious from the moment he first saw LL's work, but he had never dared to think in this direction. He never imagined it was really her. And in the audience, those who had been slandering her were now dumbfounded to realize she was their idol. A hush fell over the room, followed by an eruption of commotion. So she was LL. No wonder the manuscript details were identical to LL's. If someone were to plagiarize, how could they copy so perfectly? Exactly, no wonder she was always at art galleries. It turns out we'd met LL long ago, and had no idea public opinion shifted dramatically. The people who had been attacking Hope Donovan instantly became her fans, turning all their anger on the person who started the rumors. Who could be so disgusting, spreading rumors without any proof? They should be damned. We should make this person apologize and pay for what they've done. In a corner, Chloe Carter's face was pale with rage. She had never imagined that LL was actually Hope Donovan. She had thought that the plagiarism scandal would ruin Hope's image in Ethan Westwood's eyes. She never expected Hope to so completely turn the tables on her. Chloe put on a mask and slipped out of the venue quietly, but just as she reached the entrance, a group of bodyguards in black suits blocked her path. "Miss Carter, please come with us." Chloe glanced around nervously. "Who are you? I don't know you." She turned to run, only to find her escape route blocked as well. Before she could struggle, the lead bodyguard grabbed her arm and pushed her into a car. The car sped off, and when it finally stopped, Chloe realized they were at the Southgate residence. The Southgate residence was the home Ethan had prepared for her. After Hope had disappeared, Ethan had told her the residence was hers as payment for her years of service. Only now did Chloe understand that these men had been sent by Ethan. The lead bodyguard pushed her into a room, snatched her phone, and locked the door with a heavy thud. Chloe screamed in terror. "What are you doing? Let me out, give me back my phone." Chapter 29, the voice from outside the door was ice cold, devoid of any emotion. "Miss Carter, you should be well aware of what you've done. You hired men to assault Miss Donovan at the art gallery and spread rumors online to slander her. That was all you, wasn't it? From now on, you'll stay here peacefully. Someone will bring you 3 meals a day, but don't even think about leaving. The internet in the house has been disconnected. You can stay in here and reflect on your actions." She yelled frantically, "Did Ethan Westwood tell you to do this? Tell him I want to see him, let me see him. The CEO said he never wants to see you again." The footsteps outside faded into the distance, and soon, the roar of a car engine was all that could be heard before the world returned to silence. Chloe pounded on the door until her palms were red and raw. The Southgate residence was in one of Bayside City's most exclusive neighborhoods. Each house was a standalone villa with its own garden, and the soundproofing was superb. No one in the neighboring houses could hear a thing. No matter how much she screamed, no one outside would hear her. "Ethan Westwood, you are so cruel." She had been by his side for 3 years. And just because of one Hope Donovan, he had cast her aside so completely, refusing to even see her one last time. She collapsed to the floor, her heart consumed by a wild, burgeoning hatred. Meanwhile, after Hope revealed her identity as LL, she couldn't go out without attracting attention. People would approach her for autographs or photos. The insults that once flooded the internet had transformed into praise, elevating her status to an almost mythical level. Hope didn't like this. She didn't think it was a good thing. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. The last round of online harassment had already shown her the terrifying power of the internet. She had never started painting to become famous. Revealing her identity had been a last resort. Now, LL's fame was severely impacting her personal life. Fortunately, the exhibition was about to end, and she would soon be returning to the United States. A few days later, on the final day of the exhibition, she and Leo Langdon went to the gallery for the closing ceremony. As soon as they stepped out of the car, they saw that the entire front plaza was filled with yellow sunflowers. The flowers were in full, vibrant bloom. Thousands of sunflowers attracted the gazes of countless visitors, but the black Maybach parked nearby was even more eye-catching. Instinctively, Hope thought of Ethan Westwood. Besides him, she couldn't think of anyone else who would make such a grand, public display of buying so many sunflowers. Sure enough, Assistant Shaw got out of the passenger seat, walked to the back, and opened the door for Ethan. Seeing Hope, Ethan, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, strode toward her with his long, graceful steps. He stood before her, tall and elegant, his handsome features looking even more coolly charming in the sunlight. As he approached, he didn't spare Leo a single glance, offering the flowers directly to her. "Hope, congratulations on the successful conclusion of your exhibition. These are your favorite flowers. They're for you." Chapter 30. Hope didn't take the bouquet. She stood there for a long moment, then leaned over and whispered something to Leo, who then went inside the gallery first. She lifted her eyes to meet Ethan's. "Mr. Westwood, I don't like sunflowers anymore. And you don't need to send me flowers. To me, right now, you're just a stranger. A scene like this today is truly inappropriate. Please don't do it again. Whatever happened between us before, I don't want to know now. I'm leaving for the US. Soon, and I won't be coming back to Bayside City. Please take care of yourself." With that, she turned to leave. Behind her, Ethan's expression froze. He lunged forward and grabbed her hand. "Why are you avoiding me? Hope, you can't do this." She tried to pull her hand back, but his grip was too tight. Her struggles were futile. "Let me go, I'm not avoiding you." Ethan Westwood let go. He finally released her, but his eyes were filled with deep affection. "Hope, you know in your heart, if your conscience was clear, why would you be afraid to face me?" Hope rubbed her wrist, her mind a chaotic mess. She had to admit, a large part of why she wanted to leave Bayside City so hastily was to get away from Ethan. Because she didn't know if what Chloe had told her was true. What if she really was just a substitute for his one true love? A woman as proud as her could never tolerate that. No matter how desperately she had once wanted to be close to him, she was unwilling to repeat the same mistakes now. She turned away, refusing to look at him. "Mr. Westwood, please don't flatter yourself. There may be many women in Bayside City who like you, but I'm not one of them. The reason I'm leaving is that I plan to marry Leo. Since you're so insistent on an answer, I'll give you one. If you'd like to attend our wedding, you're more than welcome." As the words left her mouth, she turned and walked away without a shred of hesitation. Behind her, Ethan stood frozen, watching her resolute departure, forgetting even to breathe. She said she was going to marry Leo Langdon, the girl who had followed him around like a little shadow for over a decade. The person he had loved for half his life and waited for just as long, was telling him to his face that she was going to marry someone else. Was this heaven's punishment for him? Punishment for not recognizing her sooner, punishment for using Chloe. If this was the price, he would rather lose his own life than lose Hope. Inside the gallery, Leo was waiting by the entrance. When he saw Hope, he rushed forward and pulled her into his arms. "Hope, I was so scared." Hope stood rigidly in his embrace, neither pushing him away nor returning the hug. "Scared of what?" Leo smiled a little sheepishly. "I was scared you would leave with him." Chapter 30, one he had seen their every move from inside. It was precisely because he knew Ethan held a different place in Hope's heart that he had been so nervous and afraid. He was terrified that she would remember something, or that her heart would finally soften and she would decide to stay in Bayside City. Either scenario would be a devastating blow to him, but thankfully she had come back to his side. Hope bit her lip, trying to figure out how to explain to Leo the lie she had just told Ethan. She admitted to herself that it was a low move, using Leo as an excuse to reject Ethan. Now she had painted herself into a corner. "Hope, do you really want to marry me?" Held in his arms, Hope felt her body go numb, her mind blank. Marrying Leo seemed like the best option. He came from a good family. Mrs. Langdon treated her like her own granddaughter, and they shared the same interests. She really had no reason to refuse, but why did her heart feel so empty? Why did the image of Ethan's sorrowful face keep flashing through her mind? No, she told herself. He's sad because he's about to lose a substitute. From the very beginning, he only ever saw me as a stand-in for his fiancée. The affection in his eyes was never meant for her. Hope forcefully shook the image of Ethan from her mind and whispered a single word into Leo's ear. "Yes." Back at the Langdon estate, Leo held Hope's hand and walked up to Mrs. Langdon, raising their joined hands as if showing off a prize. "Grandma, mission accomplished." Mrs. Langdon put down her newspaper, smiling as she looked them over for a moment before clapping her hands happily. "Really? Did Hope really agree?" Hope lowered her head and murmured a soft "MHM," her cheeks burning. Seeing her shy expression, Mrs. Langdon was finally convinced they were truly together. She smiled, taking Hope's hand, her joy impossible to hide. "Good, good, good. Hope, from now on, you're a part of the Langdon family. Let me give you our family heirloom. You keep it safe." Without waiting for an answer, she slipped the bracelet from her own wrist and started to put it on Hope's. Hope was flattered but felt the meaning behind the bracelet was too heavy, and she quickly tried to refuse. "No, Grandma, you should keep it. I don't really wear jewelry like this." Seeing her refusal, Mrs. Langdon started to look hurt. "Hope, if you won't take it, does that mean you still won't accept Leo? That you won't marry into our family?" Leo chimed in from the side. "Hope, just accept it. It's a token of Grandma's affection." So many women wanted to marry into the Langdon family, and she was just a girl with no one to depend on. They had been nothing but kind to her despite her repeated hesitations. How could she bear to see them sad again? So she accepted the bracelet and thanked Mrs. Langdon solemnly. "Thank you, Grandma. Don't worry, Leo and I will be happy together. I'll take good care of him." Chapter 32. Mrs. Langdon shot her a playful glare and pouted. "Nonsense. Why would you be taking care of him? It's Leo who should be taking good care of you. If that brat bullies you in the future, you tell Grandma and I'll stick up for you." Behind them, Leo laughed teasingly. "Grandma, am I really your biological grandson? How come you're only thinking of helping Hope? Look at her temper. Do you really think I'd dare to bully her?" Hope gave him a mock, annoyed look, and Leo immediately fell silent. The three of them burst into laughter. After dinner, Hope returned to her room, replaying the day's events in her mind. Was she happy? She supposed she was. From now on, her life would have nothing to do with Ethan Westwood. That night, Hope dreamed again. She had rarely dreamed since returning to Bayside City. This time, she dreamed of Ethan Westwood and his fiancée, Hope Donovan. She never knew that Ethan could be so gentle. The two of them were snuggled on the living room sofa, and Ethan was lovingly feeding her ice cream. No matter how playful she was, he just watched her with a smile. Sometimes they would cook together, but it was always Ethan watching from the side while Hope, grumbling, expertly tossed shrimp into a hot pan. The scene shifted to 10 years ago, when they were still in high school. Hope, upset about something, stood under a tree with her school bag, tears falling like broken strings of pearls. When Ethan appeared, she stubbornly wiped her tears away and refused to say anything. In the end, Ethan found out that someone had stolen her lunch money. He threw down his school bag and chased after them, taking on 5 guys by himself. Incredibly, he didn't lose the fight and managed to get her money back. But he had a few scrapes on his face. When he returned with his shirt torn, Hope's eyes grew even redder. "Ethan, wah!" Before she could finish her sentence, she burst into tears again. After her parents died in a car crash 2 years ago, she had been living with her aunt. Life as a dependent had made her timid and insecure. It was Ethan who had, step by step, opened up her heart and brought a smile back to her face. Ethan pressed the money into her hand and gently wiped her tears with a tissue. "Don't cry, I got the money back, didn't I? And I'm not hurt. If you really feel bad, you can buy me a drink." She bit her lip, then suddenly stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Her face instantly turned crimson. "From now on, I'll buy you a drink every day." Time fast-forwarded 10 years. Ethan was on one knee, proposing to Hope amidst the cheers of everyone around them. Hope pouted, saying she wouldn't marry him without 10,000 sunflowers. Everyone laughed and teased, and Ethan promised he would make it up to her later. But before he could give her 10,000 sunflowers, Hope was in a car accident on her way to bring him lunch. Chapter 33. It was a speeding truck, careening out of control as it slammed into Hope's car. She had no chance to swerve. The entire vehicle flipped over the side of the overpass. Hope died instantly. By the time Ethan got the news and rushed to the scene, he didn't even get to see her one last time. Looking at her pale face, her body soaked in blood, the usually calm and composed Ethan felt a panic he had never known. With heavy steps, he picked up Hope's broken body, holding her as if she were a shattered treasure. The powerful CEO, a titan of the business world, cried like a child. She had never known a person could feel such profound sorrow. Even in the dream, her own heart ached along with his. When she woke up, her pillow was damp. It was as if she had lived through it all herself. So, Ethan and his fiancée had been that deeply in love. But why would she, an outsider, know all of this so clearly? Could it be that when Ethan was using her as a substitute, he described all these scenes to her, which is why they felt so real? Hope didn't know, and she didn't want to think about it anymore. Since she had decided to be with Leo, she would let the past drift away with the wind. In the following days, Mrs. Langdon enthusiastically began to plan their wedding. Hope had no other family, so they decided to keep things simple and quick. She had no specific ideas for the wedding herself, and was content to let them handle the arrangements. The next day, Leo made an appointment at a renowned bridal boutique for them to try on wedding dresses. When they arrived, the boutique was filled with gowns that shimmered brilliantly, enough to mesmerize any girl. Yet Hope's reaction was flat. It seemed not a single style could pique her interest. Leo walked over and gently squeezed her hand. "What's wrong? Don't you like any of them? Should we try another place?" Hope quickly refused. "No, that's not necessary. I probably just didn't sleep well last night and don't have much energy. You can pick a few, and I'll try them on for you." Leo waved over an assistant and selected several unique styles that he thought would suit Hope. Then he sat on the sofa outside the dressing room to wait. The gowns were all couture pieces, each one dazzling and magnificent. Hope randomly pointed to one for the assistant to help her with. As she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she zoned out. This scene, why did it feel like she had experienced it before? Fragments of images flashed through her mind, clear yet distant. Miss Langdon. The assistant's repeated calls brought Hope back to reality. She looked down and realized she was already in the wedding dress. "This gown suits you perfectly, Miss Langdon. It's so noble and elegant. Let me help you with the veil. Could you please lower your head slightly?" Hope obediently lowered her head, but the image that appeared before her eyes was of Ethan, dressed in a suit, placing the veil on her head. Why would it be Ethan? Chapter 34. Startled, she abruptly pushed the veil away and looked up to meet the assistant's apologetic eyes. "I'm so sorry, Miss Langdon. Did I hurt you?" "Strange. This is too strange. Why do I keep thinking about Ethan?" Hope apologized sheepishly to the assistant. "No, it's not you. It's my fault." After that brief interruption, she finally got the veil situated. The assistant stepped outside the curtain and said with a smile, "Mr. Langdon, get ready. You're about to see our bride-to-be." With that, two assistants pulled the curtains open simultaneously. Hope, clad in the wedding gown, slowly turned around. Leo was mesmerized. The dress perfectly complemented her figure, making her look slender and tall, with an air of understated elegance and nobility. He never thought the day would come when Hope would truly be his wife. "Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." He asked Hope, "What do you think? Do you like this dress?" Hope's reaction was as detached as if she were discussing something that had nothing to do with her. "As long as you like it." Because Hope was so indifferent, they didn't try on any more dresses and simply chose the first one. It was nearly noon when they left. Hope said she was a little hungry, so they picked a nearby restaurant for lunch. After parking the car, they chose a table by the window. Just as they were about to order, Ethan Westwood appeared at the entrance and walked slowly toward them. As if it were all planned, Ethan sat down in the empty seat across from them. "Mr. Langdon, what a coincidence. You don't mind if I join you for lunch, do you?" The Westwood and Langdon families had some business dealings in Bayside City, so Leo couldn't just be rude. He could only nod with a tight smile. "My fiancé prefers spicier food, so the dishes might be a bit hot. If you don't mind, Mr. Westwood, you're welcome to join us." Everyone in Bayside City knew that Ethan Westwood didn't eat spicy food. Leo was clearly trying to get him to leave. But today, Ethan seemed to miss the hint entirely, brazenly replying, "That's fine. I'll eat whatever Hope orders." Holding the menu, Hope felt two piercing gazes fixed on her. She randomly picked 5 dishes and handed the menu back to the waitress. For some reason, when ordering, she had subconsciously chosen 2 mild Cantonese dishes. It was only when the food arrived that she realized what she had done. Ethan looked at the 2 mild dishes on the table and couldn't help but let the corners of his lips curve up slightly. "Hope ordered all my favorite dishes." Hope glanced nervously at Leo. Sure enough, his expression was strained, but he managed to keep his composure. "Mr. Westwood is our guest, after all. Naturally, we should respect our guests' preferences. I'm glad you like them." Calling Ethan a guest clearly drew a line between the three of them. Chapter 35, the meaning behind his words was clear. He and Hope were a couple, and Ethan was merely an outsider. The meal was tasteless and tense. Leo constantly put food on Hope's plate, even peeling shrimp for her by hand. These were things he normally did, but in front of Ethan, it all felt incredibly awkward. And Ethan's expression grew darker by the minute. When the meal finally ended, while Leo was paying the bill, Ethan grabbed her arm again. Hope quickly pulled her hand away and said anxiously, "Mr. Westwood, if you have something to say, just say it. Please don't be so physical." Ethan's brow was deeply furrowed, his gaze so soft it could melt stone. "Hope, I don't believe you really want to marry him. Your eyes can't lie." She lowered her head, not daring to meet his gaze. "I do want to marry Leo, Mr. Westwood. He's been with me for a long time, and he's been very good to me. In the future, please don't appear in front of me again. I don't want Leo to get the wrong idea." Hope's every word was like a sharp blade, piercing Ethan's heart until it was riddled with holes. She said she was afraid Leo would misunderstand, afraid he would be sad. Did she not know how much pain he was in? A torrent of emotions flashed across Ethan's face, but in the end, he could only speak in a humbled tone. "If you're marrying Leo just to avoid me, I can promise I won't bother you again. Marriage is for a lifetime. I hope you'll think it through carefully." Just as he finished speaking, Leo returned and walked straight up to them, pulling Hope to his side. "Mr. Westwood, you don't need to worry about my marriage with Hope. If you'd like to come for a celebratory drink on the wedding day, I'll be happy to host you. We have other things to do, so we'll be leaving now." With that, he took Hope's hand and left without a second thought. Ethan watched their departing figures and slammed his fist into a nearby pillar. "You've got some nerve, Leo Langdon. You're just taking advantage of Hope's amnesia to trick her." He refused to believe that if Hope regained her memories, she would still be willing to marry Leo. After parting with Ethan, his words echoed in Hope's mind. Why had she decided to be with Leo? Was it because of love or gratitude? When you love someone, your eyes can't lie, and neither can your heart. She enjoyed the feeling of being with him, but she lacked the possessiveness that lovers feel for each other. A relationship like that wasn't love. Was she really going to spend the rest of her life like this, marrying a man she didn't love? Would Leo be happy? She reflected again and again but couldn't find the right answer. Life is full of choices, like forks in the road. A single decision, a single path chosen, can change a person's entire life. Perhaps she needed to think about it more carefully. Chapter 36. As the wedding day drew closer, Hope's anxiety grew, and she spent night after night unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face, full of affection and sorrow. The emotions were driving her to the brink of collapse, but she didn't know what to do. The wedding venue was booked, the invitations had been sent, and the reception hall was being decorated in sky blue, Hope's favorite color. Hope stood on the balcony, looking out at the scenery, her chest feeling tight as if a fire was smoldering inside her. She put on a jacket, slipped on her shoes, and went out alone, walking along the quiet path outside the villa. The area was usually deserted, a perfect place for her to think. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching from behind. The next second, a pair of hands shot out from behind her, clamping firmly over her mouth. In an instant, her world went black, and she lost consciousness. When she woke up again, Hope found herself in a dilapidated factory. The windows were boarded up, her hands and feet were bound, and her mouth was sealed with duct tape. It was eerily quiet, except for the occasional sound of construction in the distance, suggesting she was somewhere in the suburbs. Hope tried to stand, but with her limbs tied, she couldn't move. Who had kidnapped her? The Langdons' villa was in one of Bayside City's most secure neighborhoods, with ample security personnel. Whoever did this had to be very familiar with the area to have abducted her without alerting anyone. But why kidnap her? As far as she knew, she hadn't made any enemies in Bayside City. Except for Chloe Carter, but hadn't Ethan said that Chloe had already left the city? She couldn't be sure it was her, but thinking about it, Chloe seemed to be the only person capable of something so insane. Or perhaps because she had revealed her identity as LL, someone had kidnapped her for ransom? That seemed more likely. As dusk settled, a cold wind swept through the empty factory. She had only grabbed a light jacket when she left the house, and now the wind made her shiver uncontrollably. Suddenly, she heard the clanking of a metal chain at the door, and then it swung open. Flanked by two burly men, Chloe Carter walked in. She waved her hand, and the two men stood guard at the door. It really was her. Her face was wrapped in gauze, her eyes were bloodshot, and she approached Hope step by step in her sharp high heels. When she reached her, she bent down and ripped the tape from Hope's mouth. A sharp sting of pain brought tears to Hope's eyes. She bit her lip and looked up at Chloe. "I've done nothing to you. What do you want?" To her surprise, Chloe let out a cold laugh. "Done nothing? How can you say you've done nothing to me? Huh?" Chapter 37. If it weren't for Hope, she would be the esteemed Mrs. Westwood right now, enjoying all the power and wealth that came with being Ethan's wife. But because of her, she had not only lost everything, but had also been imprisoned by Ethan in the Southgate residence, living in complete isolation. God only knew how she had survived those months. She was like a caged pet, with no freedom whatsoever. Every day was spent in a daze. She had been tortured to the brink of madness. Then one day, she seized an opportunity when the guard was away, broke a window, and jumped out to escape. But in the process, her face was slashed by the glass. A huge gash ran from the corner of her eye to her chin. The doctor said her face was ruined. With current medical technology, the scar could never be removed. It was a devastating blow. Without this face, how could Ethan ever accept her back? So she directed all her fury at Hope. When she escaped, she had taken her bank cards, which still had some money. She hired a few thugs and planned this kidnapping. Now she had only two things to do. First, make Ethan pay a ransom. Second, once the money was in her hands, she would kill the woman who had ruined her life. In the CEO's office at the Westwood Group, Ethan stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, his figure casting a lonely silhouette. He watched the security footage of Hope being kidnapped on his phone, his heart feeling like it was being fried in hot oil. Yesterday afternoon, he received a call that Chloe had escaped. That night, he received a message demanding he bring $5 million in cash, alone, to a designated location to get Hope back. This Chloe was insane, completely irrational. The thought of Hope in her hands made him want to strangle Chloe with his bare hands. He had been too soft. Because of her resemblance to Hope and the 3 years they had spent together, he could never bring himself to throw her in prison. For someone like her, a prison sentence would ruin her entire life. He had only planned to confine her for a while. Once she had reformed, he would give her a sum of money and send her abroad. He never imagined she would turn her anger on Hope. He had already lost Hope twice. This time, he would not allow for any mistakes. "Sir, the police have been notified. They said they will monitor the situation closely. Also, the CEO of Langdon Corp would like to see you." Ethan's brow furrowed, his face clouded over. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Let him in." A moment later, Leo Langdon was led in by Mark Shaw. Upon seeing Ethan, Leo walked straight up to him and landed a hard punch on his jaw. Chapter 38. This punch is for Hope. Ethan's head snapped to the side, and he tasted blood in his mouth. He coldly wiped it away. When Leo moved to strike again, Ethan caught his fist. "Leo Langdon, I didn't fight back the first time out of respect for Hope. Don't push your luck." With that, he shoved Leo away and sat down on the sofa. "If you're here to cause trouble, you can leave." Leo's face was pale with anger, but he didn't try to fight again. He sat on the opposite sofa, his expression grim. "I saw the surveillance footage. The kidnappers weren't professionals. They were probably desperate. Ethan, if you truly love Hope, you shouldn't have let her get into this kind of danger." Ethan's brows knitted together, a dark glint flashing in his eyes. After a long silence, he stood up impassively. "I don't need you to teach me how to love Hope. I will bring her back safely." Leo looked up, his gaze cold. "You'd better keep your word." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. After Leo left, Ethan had Mark Shaw get the cash. Then, he drove alone to the location specified in the message. Chloe had demanded he come alone, so he brought no one. By the time he arrived at the appointed place, the sky was completely dark. Only a single, small torch burned at the entrance to the factory. He had been instructed to park his car a kilometer away, leave the money inside, and walk to the location. Ethan, holding a lighter, walked to the factory entrance. Chloe was sitting inside, waiting. When she saw him, she first froze, then laughed at herself. "Ethan Westwood, oh, Ethan Westwood, you're really willing to risk your own life for her? She's just a substitute. Is she worth it?" Ethan stared at her, his expression so cold it could freeze water. "She was never a substitute. Chloe, I've brought the money. Can you let her go now?" "If she was never a substitute, then what am I? What was all my time and effort for?" Chloe laughed coldly, the sound chilling and desolate in the dark night. She opened the door and walked deeper inside. Hope was tied up and thrown on the floor. She hadn't eaten or drunk anything for a day and a night and was now barely conscious. Seeing this, Ethan's face darkened like a sky full of storm clouds, ready to unleash a tempest at any moment. He forcefully suppressed the rage boiling inside him and allowed Chloe to walk over to Hope and pull her up. Her bodyguards stood between them, preventing Ethan from getting any closer. Chloe patted Hope's face, and she slowly opened her eyes. She never expected the person standing before her to be Ethan. Chapter 39. Hope was in disbelief. She tried to speak, but her throat was so dry it felt like it was on fire, and she couldn't utter a single word. "Ethan, my face is ruined. I don't look like your Hope anymore. Doesn't that break your heart?" Chloe pulled a dagger from her pocket and lightly traced it over Hope's cheek. The cold blade glinted, stabbing at Ethan's eyes. He clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Chloe, I'm the one who wronged you. Whatever you want, take it out on me," she laughed coldly. "Oh, sounds like you don't care. What if I ruined her face too?" With that, she raised the dagger, pretending she was about to slash it across Hope's face. Hope closed her eyes in despair, but the expected pain never came. She opened her eyes to see Ethan kneeling in front of her, his bare hand wrapped tightly around the blade. Blood instantly gushed out. Chloe, terrified, dropped the knife, her eyes wild with pain. "Ethan Westwood, are you willing to lose your hand for her?" Ethan's face was grim. Without a word, he pulled Hope into his arms, hiding his injured hand behind his back. "Don't be afraid." Hope buried her face in Ethan's chest, the familiar, comforting scent of him filling her senses. For some reason, from the moment he appeared, she felt an inexplicable sense of security, as if she had nothing left to fear. One of the men rushed to the door. "We got the money, let's go." Hearing this, the two bodyguards immediately moved to pull Chloe away. But suddenly, as if possessed, she snatched the dagger from the ground and lunged at Hope. Go to hell. If she couldn't have Ethan's heart, then they would all be destroyed together. As the dagger flew toward Hope, Ethan turned without hesitation, shielding her with his body. With the sound of the blade piercing flesh, Ethan collapsed like a falling mountain. Blood poured out. Seeing that someone was about to die, the accomplices didn't dare linger. They grabbed the case of money and scrambled to leave. Police sirens wailed outside and bright headlights flooded the factory. Chloe slumped to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Wrong. It was all wrong. The police quickly swarmed in, arresting the suspects one by one. Hope, pinned beneath Ethan, was pale as a sheet. There was blood everywhere. It was just like the scene of her car crash. Someone untied the ropes on her hands, but she remained numb, staring at the man who had collapsed in front of her. The car crash, the loop, falling into the water. She remembered everything. Chapter 40. By the time the ambulance arrived, Ethan had lost a lot of blood. Hope followed behind, feeling as if her soul had left her body. What if something happens to Ethan? If he dies, what will I do? In the ambulance, the paramedics worked frantically to stop the bleeding. His eyes were shut tight, but his hand still held hers firmly. He had said, "Don't be afraid." Hope's tears flowed like a bursting dam. She had never felt so prone to crying. She was such a fool, a complete fool. It turned out she was never a substitute. She was Hope Donovan. In the 9th cycle, her Ethan had finally recognized her, but she had forgotten him. Why did fate have to play such cruel jokes, giving her hope time and time again, only to snatch it away? If anything happened to Ethan, she would not live on alone. When the ambulance reached the hospital, he was immediately rushed into the emergency room. Such a long knife had pierced his chest, and he had lost so much blood. His chances looked slim. Hope sat on a bench in the hallway outside the operating room, her eyes fixed on the flashing red light. The light was like the eye of a demon, watching everything, waiting to swallow someone whole. Mark Shaw arrived and saw Hope, her face streaked with tears. He couldn't help but speak. "For all these years, the president has been searching for you. He felt so guilty about what happened back then. After you were gone, he developed insomnia. He could barely sleep 5 hours a night. He sent countless people out to find you, but every time, the news came back that there was no trace of you. How could a living person just disappear? So the president always believed you must be hiding somewhere in the world. Everyone tried to tell him that after so long, if you were still alive and knew he was looking for you, you would have come back. The waves were so strong that day, and you weren't a good swimmer. They said you were likely gone for good. But every time he heard words like that, he would fly into a rage. He refused to believe you were gone. The hope that you were still out there was the only thing that kept him going. Only now did Hope understand that in the face of life and death, the living suffer far more than the dead. How had he endured all these years? Every second, every minute had been agony. After what felt like an eternity, the doors to the operating room finally opened. Hope rushed forward anxiously. The doctor removed his mask and let out a long sigh of relief. The surgery was a success, but the patient lost a lot of blood. Whether he wakes up or not will depend on him. Hope's vision went dark, and she nearly fainted. Mark Shaw caught her and helped her to the recovery room with Ethan. Hope had never seen Ethan look so fragile. He was sleeping soundly, his long eyelashes casting shadows on his impeccably handsome face. What if he never wakes up? The thought consumed her, dragging her down into a bottomless abyss. She would rather it had been her who was stabbed. She had died once already. To die again was her fate, and she accepted it. But Ethan couldn't die. He was so brilliant, so young. Everyone in Bayside City knew of Ethan Westwood. He was exceptionally educated, incredibly capable, and had become a titan of the business world at a young age. Countless prominent families wanted him for their daughters. And this brilliant man was now lying weakly in a hospital bed, possibly never to wake up again, all to save her. She held his hand tightly, whispering her love for him, word by word. Chapter 41, Ethan, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. I regret it so much. If I had remembered earlier, I wouldn't have done so many things to hurt you. Please wake up, okay? I never forgot you for a moment. From the first time I saw you, I knew there was an undeniable connection between us. But I didn't know we had loved each other so deeply, that we had been through so much. I was so scared that you only saw me as a substitute, so I pushed you away. I even foolishly agreed to be with Leo. I'm such a terrible person. I failed you, and I failed Leo. You know what? When I was trying on wedding dresses with Leo, all I could see in my mind was your face. Sometimes I would think, how wonderful would it be if the person standing beside me was you? At this point, Hope was sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan Westwood, you big dummy. I'm telling you, if you don't wake up, I'm going to America with Leo and I'll never come back. She said so much, but Ethan's eyes remained tightly shut, with no sign of a reaction. Hope's heart sank lower and lower. But then she remembered the doctor saying he might just be exhausted and could get better with time. A soft knock came from the door. Hope turned to see that Leo Langdon had been waiting outside all this time. Seeing Leo, she wiped her tears, gently placed Ethan's hand back under the covers, and then stepped out of the room. Facing Leo with her memories restored, Hope was completely different. She could no longer be as close to him as before, but she knew she had hurt him deeply. 1,000 words were on the tip of her tongue, but only one thing came out. Leo, I'm sorry. Leo bent down slightly, and just as he always had, gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. Hope, don't cry. You never have to say you're sorry to me. Hope, I was the one being selfish. I only thought about being with you and didn't consider your true feelings. Actually, when you were so distracted during the wedding planning, I should have understood. You can't force matters of the heart, and besides, there's a matter of who came first. I know everything about you and Ethan. Don't feel too much pressure. I'll explain things to Grandma. Hope had imagined 1,000 different reactions from Leo, but not one of them was like this. Not only did he not blame her, he was comforting her instead. The kinder he was, the more guilty she felt. How lucky she was to have met someone like Leo. All right, stop crying. Get some rest. You must have been terrified these past 2 days. Take care of yourself. And don't worry, the Langdon home will always be your home. Grandma and I will always be your family. If Ethan Westwood ever dares to bully you, I won't let him get away with it. Hope nodded forcefully, a million words caught in her throat, unable to be spoken. When Ethan woke up, she would bring him to apologize properly to Leo. For the next few days, Hope stayed at the hospital, taking care of Ethan. But as the days passed, Ethan still showed no signs of waking up. Chapter 42, Hope sat by his bed day after day, waiting and hoping, her eyes swollen like walnuts. The doctor said all his vital signs had returned to normal. It was strange that he remained unconscious, but there was no better treatment. All they could do was wait for the patient to recover on his own. Perhaps talking to him more could help awaken him. So Hope talked to him every day, starting from when they were children, then about their engagement and their plans for the future. As she spoke, Ethan didn't wake up, but Hope herself couldn't stop her tears from flowing. She collapsed onto his hand, sobbing. "Ethan, you big dummy, I don't know how much longer I can hold on." After a long while, Hope finally calmed herself and looked up. She noticed his lips were a bit dry, so she went to pour a glass of water to give him a drink. And just then, his finger twitched ever so slightly. Hope's mind went blank. She felt like she couldn't breathe. The glass in her hand slipped, shattering on the floor with a crash. Ignoring the broken glass, she rushed to Ethan's bedside. She felt her breath catch, her hands pressed tightly against her chest as if her heart was about to leap out. Because Ethan's eyes were really moving. That long row of eyelashes was fluttering gently, as if he was trying with all his might to open them. Hope felt like she was dreaming. She had imagined Ethan waking up countless times, but each time, the dream would end, pulling her back to a cruel reality. She lunged forward, gripping his other hand tightly, whispering his name over and over. A passing nurse heard the commotion, came in to check, and let out a sudden gasp. She quickly covered her mouth and ran out to find a doctor. With immense difficulty, Ethan opened his eyes. Hope had never in her life felt a moment more beautiful than this one. Watching his eyelashes tremble and slowly part in a span of just half a second felt like a lifetime of waiting. She felt her own lips tremble as she murmured his name, as if it were the only magic spell in the world. "Ethan, Ethan!" Ethan's eyes moved slightly, his gaze gradually focusing on her face. He raised his hand, gesturing for her to come closer. She threw herself onto his arm, letting her tears flow freely. In the 9th cycle, he had finally found his love. This time, they would never be apart again.